Hey guys, welcome to part 9 of What If Naruto Was Neglected Heir of Uzumaki clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe as it inspires me to make more such videos. So let's get started. Chapter 25. Odagakure. Naruto was sitting on top of a tree branch within the Sound Country. Just ahead of him, there was a cloud of smoke coming from the hideout of Orochimaru he had just set on fire without regards to what was within it. There wasn't anything valuable that he wanted. True, Orochimaru possessed a wealth of information, but not everything had to be kept. It wasn't the motto of the Uzumaki, but since this was Orochimaru's torture techniques, it wasn't anything that they had to keep. A masked red-headed woman appeared out of thin air and sat beside him. There were no greetings exchanged, she just started talking. Uchiha has been separated from the Raikage's brother. We think that they are planning to use them on different playgrounds. It would make much sense for them to do so. Konoha didn't have many who could stand up to the Bajoa's strength. If those two transformed, they could wreak havoc in the battlefields they graced. They didn't have to be gentle about it. It was war, they only needed to go on a rampage as if they had lost control, and they would annihilate all those who stand in the way. Something like that happening would certainly be devastating to Konoha, and he would not mind doing the same just for payback. Anything any Jinchuriki could do, the Kyuubi could do it even better. The Bajoa he was contracted with was the strongest after all. But before that, there was the Akatsuki. The group was making moves to attack the Jinchurikis, and that was something that would prove problematic, but they would have to deal with it. He wasn't much concerned about the group's objective, he was only looking for it, because they would come for him because he has the Kyuubi under his command. Konoha viewed the organization as a major threat to the peace of the elemental nations. He found that to be amusing because there was no peace in this world. They were at war because of petty reasons that could have been resolved in simple terms. Shinobi were just some flawed creatures infesting this world. Well, he wasn't the one to say because even he was flawed. Well, he didn't go around preaching the gospel to people. He came with all the flaws one could possess, but at least he knew how to control himself. Can we say that the Akatsuki is aware of their locations? Naruto asked. It wouldn't change much in what they knew about them, but it would make him a busy person during the war. He wasn't complaining, and he would not complain. He was okay to face the dangers that came with being a shinobi of his power level. Yes. The agent said with a small nod. We cannot say for sure, but it appears that they have targeted Tsunagakure for its Jinchuriki. 2 members of the organization were seen taking the direction of the sand. The Kasage doesn't appear to know about it. There was no suggestion of doing anything to warn them. That wasn't their business. There have been many times that they have played the role of gods, and just observed humans doing their things. Even when knowing that there would be dangers, they did nothing to warn the endangered to stop those with the thoughts to do harm. Matters that were not of their business were kept away, only for records. If a non-Uzumaki could read their hidden records, the opinion about them would certainly turn worse. They knew a lot of things and have kept some information to themselves even though the information could have saved lives. Well, they were not obligated to do anything and did intervene in some cases. They were not all that bad. Konoha has been kept aware of the threats that directly affect its walls by them, so they were safe within. It was the threat occurring outside that they did not say anything about, and some things they considered trivial. Besides that, Suna had decided not to back up Konoha even though they were allies. The Hidden Leaf wouldn't have done something like that. The Leaf couldn't even spare any shinobi to fight the Akatsuki at this stage. Well, if the entire Sand Village couldn't deal with just 2 members of the Akatsuki, then the village was truly weak. Once we have confirmed that they are heading towards the sand, we will close the records. What will happen afterwards will be known by everyone, and we cannot risk getting closer. We might be exposed. Naruto said. Iwa's Jinchuriki are still within the outskirts of Konoha. Have we narrowed their precise location? The agent shook her head. No, if we are going to find them, we'd have to alert the Hyuga and get them to dig up while we watch from afar. That, however, has risks. We don't know what they might do if they are found. Continue searching for them. Naruto said after a few moments of thought. What of Orochimaru? We have tracked the girl we saw in Kabuto's memories. Orochimaru has been moving with her. She seems to have something special about her chakra, and he has been interested in it. The agent paused. We have a guest. It appears so. The moment Naruto confirmed those words, the agent just vanished as if she hadn't been there in the first place. Naruto narrowed his eyes behind him for a moment before staring down at the ground. You're slightly intimidating. Well, that should be expected from someone who claims to be Madara. Claims? Obito asked. Yes. It is a claim that Orochimaru has proved to be incorrect. Your identity is one that is still mysterious. That cursed Orochimaru. He didn't know that the snake had gotten so far in his search for the truth. He shouldn't have just left him like that. The man was truly dangerous when it came to finding out the truth. Had he really disregarded the man's existence, thinking it would not do anything to change the plan he was carrying out? This little piece of information from Naruto showed him that there were things that Orochimaru knew that he didn't want anyone to know, a problem that needed to be resolved quickly. Well, at least the snake was going to be killed soon. I guess that gave you something to think about, Naruto said of Obito's silence. What does the Akatsuki want from me? I hardly doubt it could be an attempt to recruit me. It's even ridiculous just saying it. Do you want me to freely give you the Kyuubi? We will need it, but not now. First, we must get the One Tail. Obito responded calmly. So we are going by an order. Oh, you're a lot sharper than people give you credit for, Obito said lightly. If you give us the Kyuubi, even half of it, Konoha will be spared from destruction. You have the two halves, and we only need just one. We have the power to destroy Konoha, and we will do so if you don't give us the Kyuubi. The masked man paused for a moment before adding. If you go north from here and travel for an hour, you should find his hideout. The man disappeared after saying those words. Just away from the Valley of End. Battle cries rang around the battlefield as Konoha faced off against the combined forces of Iwa and Kumo. In the midst of all the bloodshed, pained cries, Jutsus Kakashi was caught up in his thoughts. Somehow it didn't feel right to be fighting this war. In the previous war he fought, the reasons behind it hadn't mattered, he had simply done his duty as a shinobi of the Hidden Leaf. A lot has changed since then. He changed. He thought more about things than he did. He was no longer a child. Was the shinobi world a corrupted world like this? They were killing each other just because someone was stronger, just that petty reason. Those who desired power could try to get it without killing someone. People were different, skills were different, and people who understood that and accepted themselves didn't go around killing others for power. His reasons really didn't matter, did they? Because he had to fight, no matter what. Konoha would be plundered if he did not fight. They were fighting to protect their home from enemies who wanted nothing more than to destroy them. Kakashi knew, though, this war could be ended within one day. They just had to release their weapons and enemy forces would lie on the battlefield wasted. They had T-. The Jonin didn't get to finish his thought as a shinobi landed a flying kick straight to his face, sending him flying backwards. Kakashi was quick to recover. He flipped once before landing on the ground with both his feet, unshaken by the surprise attack that had caught him off guard. The man who had attacked rushed towards him once again. Kakashi took a stance. Dynamic entry, Guy shouted as he crashed a brutal kick to the temple of the shinobi. The man was sent flying backwards by the powerful kick from the taijutsu specialist. You're sleeping on the battlefield, Kakashi, Guy said in a rare serious tone. Kakashi shook his head. I was just thinking about how wrong this is, the Jonin said a bit lazily. But I guess it doesn't really matter. If we just stand still, they will not allow us to rest, or to live. He paused, looking around the battlefield. They are ready to kill us. They are, but we must do our job here. We are not fighting against what is right or wrong, but to protect our beloved home. The green-clad Jonin said a bit enthusiastically, dashing off, leaving just dust behind him. Well, it was about time he got a little serious with things. Just outside of Orochimaru's hideout, Orochimaru was standing next to the trunk on a tree, with a redhead young girl tied against it. Not just by her hair, but by the chakra signature, he could tell it was the Uzumaki the man had with him. She was about Kurin's age. A damn pity. It wasn't long ago that you were facing me along with Itachi, Orochimaru said, facing Naruto with a grin on his face. This time it is with some different circumstances. Last time, you would not face me alone. I was given the impression that you may have been afraid of me. It wouldn't have been so wrong for the redhead to be afraid of him. He was after all a Sannin and Naruto was still just a child. Well, that was what he thought anyway, and many would disagree with him on that note. The things that the Uzumaki clan head did were not things a child can do. He was a grown-up who did many horrible things to survive. As he stood before the redhead, Orochimaru didn't think for a second that he would lose the battle. Perhaps it was because he was a little ticked off that the Akatsuki had managed to steal Garen away from him. He had planned to use her, and he was been busy cultivating Kimamuro's cells to create something of a perfect body that would take him past centuries. His research was still intact, he just had to go through this little battle, and then hide until the war was over. With the Akatsuki now focusing on him, it was a lot more dangerous than it had been before. It was fine with the group not attempting anything. As you say, that was under different circumstances, and I had my reasons for opting against fighting you alone. Naruto responded in a calm tone. He looked at the girl through barely opened eyes for a second before looking back at Orochimaru. I'm surprised that you were willing to meet me head-on. I thought you'd want to hide under a hole just until everything settles down. It wasn't an option, Orochimaru said. You were looking for me, and if I managed to satisfy you with just one battle, you would not have the time to chase after me, but focus on the war. Besides, I was thinking of using this precious Uzumaki girl as a bargaining chip for my escape. It would not do, Naruto said, responded with indifference. She may be Uzumaki, but killing you comes first. Besides, looking at her condition, it wouldn't be far off to assume that you didn't do anything to put her life at risk. Kukukukukukukukuku, Orochimaru laughed before clasping his hands together. Bingo, Naruto-kun, the Sannin said with a wide grin. You see, Karin has special chakra, very special. Nevertheless, I have collected what I need from her. Therefore, you can say that I no longer have any use for her. However, you do. She is a precious Uzumaki after all. Even though she has precious chakra, she isn't immune to poison. As we speak, the poison is spreading through her body and… The snake Sannin paused to think for a moment. In about an hour, if she doesn't get help, she will die. What a despicable creature. Naruto's eyes opened halfway, showing nothing but an ice-cold background. It was done just to give him pressure when they do engage in battle. He would have to fight thinking about time and the girl. Time wasn't on his side. It was already ticking, and he may have to stop the battle just so he could save Karin, the girl with the same name as his beloved younger sister. This was Orochimaru, a devious snake. He still had another mission that he had to do after finishing things here, so time wasting hadn't been part of the plan. Besides, if he fools around, the snake would bite him with its poisonous fangs. He has already been poisoned once, he didn't want to through that again. Those are some chilling eyes, Orochimaru said with an amused mask on his face. For a second, I felt a chill run down my spine. Naruto did not offer any words in response. He lunged towards Orochimaru in blinding speed. The snake Sannin didn't show any surprise when the redhead flashed in front of him a second later, his right foot traveling through the air, heading towards the left side of his head. Orochimaru reacted by ducking under the kick. The moment he was under the kick, he snaked behind the redhead before standing up. It all happened instantly. He had his back facing the Uzumakis when he straightened up and did not turn around when he shoved his right elbow towards Naruto's back. Naruto didn't look back either when his right hand flashed behind with his right foot still in the air after missing its target. He caught Orochimaru's elbow cleanly. The snake didn't mind as his head twisted in no way humanly possible to face Naruto. His neck extended as he attempted to bite Naruto on the side of his neck. The redhead shifted his upper body to left, while his left hand went up just above his right shoulder, grabbing Orochimaru by his face. He still had his hold on the snake's elbow when they caught the man's face. Without wasting a second to think, his left hand burst with red flames. Orochimaru swiftly flashed away. Naruto took a second to look at Karin before twisting around to look at the grinning Orochimaru. "You have good reflexes. Well, that is what one would expect from you. Konoha doesn't know your true strength because you have always shied away from one-on-one battles with stronger opponents that would expose your true potential. I wonder what that was about." The Sannin said in thought. "Don't concern yourself with my actions," Naruto said in a calm tone as he slowly walked towards the snake Sannin. Orochimaru smiled before opening his mouth wide open. Naruto didn't wait for the Sannin to do what he wanted to do. He flashed in front of him and tried to grab him by his throat, but Orochimaru bended his body backwards in ridiculous proportions. The snake Sannin struck next by landing a powerful punch on Naruto's chest. The punch connected head-on, sending the redhead away from him, but Naruto shook it off quickly and regained his balance before standing still as he watched Orochimaru. "The sword of Kusanagi," Naruto said, looking at the sword playing on Orochimaru's right hand. "That is an interesting piece you have there. Well, I guess a poisonous person like you would favor a weapon like that." He paused for a moment. "Let me also introduce you to the sword of Uzumaki." Orochimaru laughed when he heard that. "Kukukukukuku. There is no such thing, Naruto-kun. I would have known if such a sword existed." He had spent his years trying to find all the powerful swords that were there in this world. He hadn't been able to find them all, but this one he held was still precious weapon. "I actually came up with that name just now," Naruto responded indifferently. Orochimaru blinked before bursting into laughter. He calmed himself. "Introduce me to this sword already," the snake said, allowing his curiosity to get the best of him. Naruto held out his right hand. A pure silver blade came out from the palm of his hand. The sword was long, straight, and double-edged. The handle of the sword was still silver, but there was no cloth covering it. Naruto gripped the handle of the sword and waved it once before looking at Orochimaru. "You would not know because I created it, and so far, I have been using an imperfect version of it. You see, when I was younger, I thought about creating a sword purely made out of chakra chains. It took years to make as I had to first learn to willfully manipulate." The redhead paused before shaking his head. "You don't need to know that, but I will say this, the sword should be able to cut through anything, theoretically at least. But I assume it would not cut through your sword." "You assume?" Orochimaru asked, still amused. "Yes, for now. I want to test it. I have not used it in real battle. You don't mind if I test how I can move with it on you, do you, Orochimaru?" Naruto asked calmly. This whole battle was a test run for him anyway, a warm-up before the main dish. At his current strength, Orochimaru wasn't scary. Without thinking too much, Naruto dashed towards the Sannin. Orochimaru didn't wait for Naruto to get him, he too lunged towards the redhead. Naruto swung his sword cleanly in a horizontal slash across Orochimaru's chest. The snake Sannin blocked the swing by aligning his sword across his right. The blades clashed, causing sparks to ignite. Naruto felt his sword tremble slightly, but he didn't pay it mind as he brought out his bandaged left hand. The Sannin was still able to act faster than he could by bringing out his left hand. "Many hidden snakes?" the Sannin yelled. A couple of snakes burst from his hand, rushing towards Naruto's face. The redhead reacted by spitting out a small ball of intense. Within a second, the flames had incinerated the snakes. While the small flames were still burning, Naruto's sword cut through them in a surprise attack that went straight towards Orochimaru's neck. The snake Sannin was still able to jump back to avoid the swing. The moment he landed, he flicked his sword over to his left and held out one hand seal. Futon, great wind breakthrough. Even though it was still just one hand seal, the snake Sannin still managed to release powerful gusts of wind which burst above the ground, peeling the ground slightly as they rushed towards Naruto. Before the jutsu could reach him, Naruto disappeared in a blur, appearing behind Orochimaru above the ground. He swung his sword in a downward strike, heading straight at Orochimaru's head. The snake reacted as if he had expected the strike. He sidestepped the swing before twisting around in a blur. As Naruto was being forced down by gravity, he raised his knee, slamming it on the redhead's gut. Orochimaru did a quick jump before spinning around, with his right foot raised. He tried to kick Naruto straight on the forehead, but the redhead leaned back whilst still in the air, avoiding the kick. Seeing that his kick missed, Orochimaru extended his neck towards with intentions to bite him. Naruto swung his sword in front of him, aiming to cut off the snake's head, but Orochimaru still managed to block the swing with his own sword. His head continued in its march towards Naruto's face. The redhead exhaled a large ball of flames in the blink of an eye without the need of hand signs. Orochimaru's entire body was consumed by the flames. Naruto took the opportunity to make some distance from his opponent. The moment he landed on the ground, a slightly burned Orochimaru burst through the flames, lunging towards him with a downward strike. Naruto raised his sword above his head, blocking the strike. As the clang sound rang, Naruto was holding out his left hand. In the blink of an eye, his usual sword appeared in a puff of smoke. He didn't wait for a second before striking it towards Orochimaru's chest. The sword caught flames as it sped towards the snake Sannin. As it pierced through his chest, Orochimaru burst into a log. The real snake appeared behind Naruto with a wide grin as he flashed his sword in a downward strike across Naruto's back. The sword managed to hit, but to Orochimaru's surprise, a visible barrier flashed, shielding Naruto from the cut. The surprise gave Naruto enough time to twist around, lifting his right foot. Orochimaru had recovered already and managed to block the incoming kick by bracing both his hands. He was still sent flying backwards nevertheless. The second blade Naruto had summoned disappeared once again before the redhead stabbed his sword through the ground whilst holding a single hand seal with his left. The redhead suddenly blurred out of sight. Orochimaru widened his eyes when Naruto appeared in front of him. He could not see the sword, but he knew it was coming for him. Orochimaru only managed to swiftly shift his upper body, bringing up his right shoulder to take the blow. Naruto's sword cut through his shoulder, leaving a gash. The snake Sannin didn't feel a thing because it had struck so fast that his eyes hadn't even been able to see it. His years of experience had saved him. The snake Sannin didn't focus on his wound. He attempted to attack. He swung his sword, aiming at Naruto's neck. The redhead moved with grace and speed that once again surprised Orochimaru. He had ducked under the swing before taking a step forward towards the Sannin, and then his sword was driven straight into Orochimaru's gut. The Sannin quickly grabbed the blade of the sword before Naruto could pull it out. I figure since you had to summon that other sword, you can't conduct your fire chakra through this sword. The snake Sannin said, not looking concerned over the fact that Naruto's sword was inside of him. He tried to swing his sword with the hand that Naruto had cut earlier, but it suddenly came to halt as seals started to spread through it. Orochimaru looked at the hand that was holding the blade of Naruto. It was bleeding as well. The snake Sannin looked back at Naruto with a slight glare. What did you do? He demanded. He could no longer feel his hand because of the seals all over it. If you were not so arrogant, you would have taken notice of the burst of chakra that traveled through the ground after I stabbed my sword into the ground. Naruto said in a flat tone. The Hyugas will tell you that you're within a field of their vision, and in here, you're in my field. I can teleport to anywhere and fast enough before you can say coup. As for your hand, I am Uzumaki, and I told you that this sword was made from chakra chains. What is their basic use? Sealing. As he was talking, Naruto grabbed Orochimaru by his face with his left hand. You disappoint me. Just because I summoned my other blade to channel fire-based chakra doesn't mean that I can't with this sword. Don't believe anything you see. This is a battlefield. I can feed you false information to make it work for me. The redhead forcefully pulled his sword from Orochimaru's gut. Because the snake was holding it firm, the blade cut his fingers. Orochimaru didn't make a pain sound. Perhaps it was because of the iron grip on his face, which was burning his face slightly. Suton Water Prison. Naruto said before the snake Sannin became encased in water. The sword on his right hand disappeared before he placed the palm of his right hand on the ball of water. Experience pain Orochimaru. The water started bubbling up with steam. A couple of seconds later, the water was boiling. Gah! Orochimaru screamed in pain as the boiling water started to cook his skin slowly. It was not fun, this was sweet pain that was melting his skin slowly. The jutsu suddenly stopped, the water bursting freeing the snake. However, before he could do anything, Naruto shoved his right hand inside his opened mouth. Katon Rasengan. Orochimaru's throat burst as the spiraling ball of flames formed inside of it. His head remained intact, nevertheless. The snake fell on its knees, its skin to the point of disgusting, and a gaping hole on its throat. It was in a pitiful state. I know you cannot use your full power because of your current state. The modifications you have done to your body are a problem. Your current host cannot even survive your full power, nor even sustain you for too long. Orochimaru could not speak, but the hole on his throat closed before he opened his mouth wide. 2 hands pulled up from the mouth and slowly, a whole body of Orochimaru popped up in slime. He had shed his skin. The snake frowned when he looked at his right hand. He could move it, but the chakra was still sealed. He looked back at Naruto. I'd forgotten about this ability of yours, even though it is what made you famous in Kiri. You did also use it in Kumo when you took part in the Chunin exams. The snake said as it picked up its sword with its right hand. You've recovered, but you look a little winded. Naruto said. Well, if that had led to your death, it would have been disappointing, not that I would have complained. You would have been naive to think something like that would end me. Orochimaru said with all the arrogance he could muster. Naruto shook his head. He hadn't at once sounded like that in his life even though he was pretty sure of his own strength. He didn't go around underestimating shinobi. His track record in a battlefield could attest to that, even though he did at times display a level of arrogance. It wasn't displayed to other people, but just to himself. I have to admit, that did take a little out of me. Orochimaru said calmly. The pain hadn't been anything to give him nightmares. Hell, he was over it already at the moment he shed his skin, it was no longer even a memory. Still, he could not manipulate chakra through his right hand. That would prove to be a disadvantage. Maybe he could use Karin now, but he wasn't sure that Naruto was that kind of a person who would stop the fight. The Uzumaki looked like a person who would tell him to go ahead and kill the girl. This was still nothing that could make him lose confidence in beating Naruto. No, he would still go on to win this battle if he was forced to continue with it. First thing first, he needed to get out of this place. Naruto's jutsu could not cover the whole area, so he just had to go to a safe distance to be able to fight evenly. Even he was willing to admit that winning against that jutsu would be something difficult, especially when the redhead was a stamina freak. Orochimaru tried to twist around, but Naruto flashed in front of him within a second. Orochimaru grinned as the sword of Kusanagi pierced through Naruto the side of Naruto's chest. He had simply placed it in position knowing that the redhead would immediately rush in front of him. I bet you were thinking, do you think I am going to just let you go? Orochimaru asked mockingly with a smirk on his face. I figured you'd be overconfident enough to budge in saying those words. Itachi-kun would have avoided it because of the Sharingan's Abi-. Orochimaru was cut off when Naruto suddenly grabbed him by his throat with his right hand whilst his left grabbed the hand holding the sword of Kusanagi. Naive of me. The redhead breathed in a hardened tone. Orochimaru could not move. He could not do anything with his right hand because its chakra had been sealed, and the redhead was gripping his neck very tightly that he was struggling to breathe. He could not spit out anything from his mouth because of it. Chakra chains burst through the ground and pierce through Orochimaru's body, 2 pierce through his knees, 2 more through his waist, 1 from between his legs upwards towards his throat. Naruto let go of Orochimaru, who dropped his sword. Naruto caught it before holding a left-hand seal. The chains breathe life. I forgot to mention it. It isn't your left hand that I actually sealed with my sword. If it was so, then you should have regained its usage after shedding your skin. What happened is that the seal touches your chakra system. Not to the same effect as the gentle fist strike, but it does the magic. You can thank Izumi and my mother for developing the seal. He flicked the sword over to his left hand before holding out his right. The hand burst into flames and without a warning, he drove the hand through Orochimaru's chest, where his black heart was located. He didn't want let it rest there for far too long before removing it. We shall meet again in eternal damnation, Orochimaru. Naruto stated coldly before releasing the chain that was inside the man's intestines. Orochimaru was now able to let out a pained cry as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. The chain was restricting him from transforming him into his real form, but now that it was out, he cool minus. The world turned upside down after the sword of Kusanagi separated his head from his shoulders. The redhead threw the sword into the air before clasping his hands together. Disappear, Orochimaru. Flames exploded around Orochimaru with so much intensity that Naruto felt the heat burning into his skin. Luckily, it lasted for just a couple of seconds. Orochimaru had turned into ash and the flames on the chains died down. They remained pure. Naruto fell on his knees as the sword he had thrown into the air crashed into the ground just inches away from him. He looked at the wound on the side of his chest with a deep frown. Poison again? He said. He was also bleeding. Well, at least the modifications should handle things a bit, but I must be treated soon. There was no fear of any lasting damage now. He had the sample of the poison. Placing his left hand on the wound, he picked up the sword and sealed it away along with Orochimaru's head. The bounty would do well for his project. He walked towards Karin. She was still alive and kicking, but enough time had passed away. He freed her. Can you talk? She nodded weakly. Good. According to Kabuto, you have a unique healing ability through your chakra. Can I take a bite to heal this wound before I bleed to death? Naruto asked, calmly. Karin stared for a few seconds. Naruto sighed. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, you're one of us now. After I am healed, you will go meet people of your kind. Redhead, head, Uzumaki. Naruto. He was from Konoha, and she knew that other Uzumaki were in the Hidden Leaf. Her family hadn't gone there, some of them hadn't because they felt betrayed by Konoha. There was the thought that the Hidden Leaf could have done something to protect them from the invasion. Well, those were just her young thoughts. Karin looked at the side of Naruto's chest before holding out her right hand. A minute later, the masked Uzumaki appeared beside Naruto once again. That was a good training session, don't you think? Naruto asked the woman as he straightened himself. I didn't get to let loose, but there will be time for that. At least now I am sure of myself and have no doubts that things will be alright when I am faced with murderous intents from the enemy. They are still under the assumption that you're incapable of using chakra with your left hand. The woman added. Naruto nodded. It will be a good advantage. One that must be protected, of course. That meant killing everyone who came across him in battle. It was war. Who was going to complain? Besides, they would not win by knocking out their enemies. For his case, letting them live meant giving them another chance to try to stab him in the back. He would rather not have that in his life. Enemies were to be killed, not spared. Take Karin back to Konoha. Naruto said. Which route is the safest for me to head out to my next assignment? Some of Uwa's forces have moved through the land of canyons, past the Sound, and into the land of hot water. You can only get behind them by going through the fire country. The route is long and there are no supplies currently on schedule, so you can only hit their rear guard. The woman said. However, you can still go through the land of canyons before crossing into the mushrooms. Naruto appeared to think for a moment before asking. I cannot simply wait for them whilst doing nothing. Though I can join up Kakashi at the Valley of the End. He shook his head. No, I will attack Iwa's rear. That was sort of the plan anyway. Kiri's forces should be cutting the distance, and I can welcome them. If I move now, I can attack at night. A less risky move, one that I would recommend, would give you the chance to study them before moving in. The agent said. Naruto-sama, we are concerned about the outcome of war, right? Should Konoha lose, we cannot protect Uzu without destroying any other nation considered hostile. If Konoha loses, they will attack Uzu. That is a fact, Naruto said in a firm tone. What do you have in mind? The enemy outnumbers massively and Konoha has made a mistake of underestimating their numbers. You are going into the mushrooms. You can still pass by Kakashi's forces. If there is no intervention, they might be wiped out. With Kakashi ducked under a flying kick before rushing to the next shinobi on his path. The man was ready for him and attempted to land a straightforward punch on his face. The jonin caught the punch before swinging a left hook that landed on the man's face, sending him flying to the side. He wasn't given a moment of rest as he was forced to jump away. The moment he did so, something hard crashed onto the ground, causing a large boom that lifted up debris. The jonin became alarmed for a moment before concluding that he was dealing with an Illa shinobi who had hardened his skin. Doton. Earth spikes. Another shinobi shouted, causing the ground below the jonin to tremble slightly before earth spikes burst forth quickly, forcing Kakashi to jump up to avoid being pierced. The moment he jumped up, he found himself staring at two gleeful shinobi who seemed ready to turn him into ash by the lightning jutsu they were trying to create. Before the two could release their jutsu, two Konoha shinobi flashed above them, both slamming their back heels on their backs, sending them crashing. Kakashi was caught off guard when the shinobi who had forced him to jump away earlier gripped him with an iron grip. The grip was so tight that even the jonin had to admit it hurt, and wasn't something he could simply escape from. The man pulled quickly and brutally slammed him into the ground on his back. The crash caused the jonin to be buried into the ground. The enemy shinobi then jumped into the air, seeking to crash land on the jonin for another brutal attack. Kakashi managed to slide away from the way as the man's feet crashed into the ground. Before the man could pull himself from the ground, Kakashi was already on his feet. He lunged towards the man, before slamming an explosive tag on his bag. Then quickly jumped away as the man exploded. Once again, Kakashi was forced to duck under what came from behind. This time the jonin didn't let the man go. He took out a kunai and flung it straight at the man's foot before shifting away. Once again another explosion rocked through, but this time around it took his opponent's leg. There were various explosions occurring around the battlefield. No one was going to mind his little ones. Even though there were some heavy hitters who seemed to be out to get him. This was truly a war zone. Battles were everywhere, and people were dying. He doubted anyone was having the same thoughts as he was though. Guy suddenly landed behind him and brushed his back against his before speaking. There is no end to them, my friend. At this point, we won't last long. The green beast said in a slightly tired tone. Really, no matter how much they fought, and how many they took down, they just kept coming. It was as if there was an endless supply of them somewhere behind the lines. What was apparent was that they could not keep this forever. They would have to retreat. There was no other way. The numbers were just too great for them, and they were also losing many of their numbers. They were already outnumbered. Losing more was not something that they could afford. Even Kakashi was starting to feel the effects of a prolonged battle. He could not keep at this forever, and he wasn't even using his Sharingan anymore. Even jutsus were now a commodity. He just could not afford to waste chakra because he did not know when this would end. If he used chakra without care, he would end up regretting it. What do you think we do now? Kakashi asked. Guy didn't hide his surprise. It wasn't often that Kakashi asked for his opinion for matters like this, and this was a serious note. The man wasn't mocking him by any means. A tactical retreat. Guy said. I thought about the same thing, but how do we get around that? They surely won't let us just do that. I will enter into the 8 gates and hold them down while you retreat. If someone doesn't stay, we won't be able to escape. Guy said in a serious tone. There has to be an minus. Captain. Kakashi was interrupted by a fearful voice before he could finish responding to Guy. The Jonin frowned as he turned to the Hyuga rushing towards him. There are more of them coming our way, and it appears that they are being led by the Tsukikage's granddaughter. How many? Kakashi demanded. About 1,000, or more. The Hyuga responded. Kakashi cursed. This wasn't on the plan. Jireya's company was supposed to hold off a large portion of the enemy. Could it be that they got hold of their plans and made a counter move to get around them? At this point, the Uchiha group would not face much trouble, but he doubted it would be left alone. That wasn't the problem he was facing though. He was going to be surrounded soon and he had to come up with a plan on how he was going to survive this, not just him, but everyone under his command. Obviously, if they just waited around here, it would mean death to their side, and that would not be good if others hear of it. You look as if you could use some help, Kakashi Guy. Naruto suddenly spoke, appearing out of nowhere. He was a little glad that he had made it in time, but it had cost him some stamina. Before this, he was fighting Orochimaru, and although he didn't use too much chakra, he still spent some and the traveling had taxed him. And now, he was faced with this huge mountain that would see him burn more chakra, and he was going to use a lot of chakra in this one. This was the kind of battle that didn't need him to be the most powerful to do some damage, he just needed to use his ninjutsu to maximum effect to cause some durable damage. It didn't have to be just physically, but mentally as well. A shinobi without the will to fight was an easy target, and when things were like that, it made life simple for him. Simply because such a person could not have the will to try to kill him. Naruto. Kakashi breathed a huge sigh of relief when seeing the redhead. I have never been so happy to see you in my life. Guy was about to do something he would have had a hard time accepting, but he knew it was either that, or they all died. The former option was the best for their side of things in this petty war, but sacrifices were a hard thing to take in. Shaking off his thoughts, the Jonin focused on Naruto once more. I'm curious though, how did you know we would be in trouble? Naruto shrugged, he didn't have to respond to that question. It was important that he be here, if not, things would be difficult for Konoha. The enemy could not strike the first killing blow to them, or else they would risk losing the morale of their shinobi. Konoha was already at a disadvantage in this war, they didn't need to lose their best. You should retreat now, I will handle this. I suggest going over to join either Jiraiya or Asuma. Naruto said while stepping forward, his eyes on the murderous enemies. They were leaking a suffocating killing intent simply because he was here. He sure wasn't famous. But this was because of his actions. It was slightly amusing, bitterly so. Naruto, you don't have to sacrifice yourself. Kakashi was quick to say. Winning this war depends on you, and your father later on. Naruto turned to face the Jonin with a look that asked if the man was making a joke. Uzumaki Naruto sacrifice himself? What was the man smoking to make him say such nonsense? He would never sacrifice himself in such a manner. Kakashi smiled, it was an awkward smile as he responded. You make me look stupid when you give me that kind of a look, Naruto. Because you just sprouted some nonsense. Naruto said in a flat tone. I'm not suicidal like you or Guy, I'm giving you a chance to escape because I know I can hold them off long enough for you to escape. But of course, this ensures that I won't be able to do my other mission. Well, there is time for that. I don't doubt your strength, Naruto, but I can see that you were in battle. We can devise another strategy. The Jonin tried to reason with the Uzumaki. Naruto turned to Kakashi with an expressionless look on his face. When I give you a chance to escape, you take it, Kakashi, because I may just change my mind. This was Naruto, who could summon the Kyuubi. Surely, if he summoned the Bajoa here, it would make things simple and the Bajoa would be able to handle things with ease. It would give them more than enough time to retreat. Why did he have to think that Naruto would sacrifice himself? The Jonin shook his head as he turned serious. Send the message, we are retreating north now. He said in a hardened tone to the Hyuga who had brought him the message of more enemies coming along the way for a slaughter. It took a couple of minutes for the Konoha forces to get into position secretly for an escape before the enemy could discover what was happening. But before they could do anything, Naruto was standing between them and their opponents. He may be a bigger fish, but we will not them escape. One man yelled furiously. They were not about to allow those people to retreat when they had them. The battle was theirs to win. A retreat in the hands of defeat meant they got to fight another day. It was unacceptable. Total annihilation would mean a safe passage for Iwa to move ahead towards the hidden leaf. There was no way around it. Naruto didn't turn back to see if Kakashi was moving his forces or not. He merely did hand seals in a flash before holding both his hands around his mouth as he inhaled a load of oxygen. Katan Majestic Flame Destroyer. The redhead spat out extreme flames from his mouth. The red flames started to spread out wide quickly as they expanded forward. Within seconds, the flames had become a massive wave of flames that was tearing through the cold ground, burning everything on its path as it charged towards the large numbers of targets to turn into soil-nourishing ashes. Oh! The enemy exclaimed, looking wide-eyed at the massive jutsu heading towards their way. No time to be shocked. The leader shouted. Defensive jutsu quickly. Earth users, take the front. Suton users as well. The man shouted as he did hand seals taking the lead. For a jutsu of such a massive scale, it would not take just one mud wall to block, it would take a couple of them, or as many as they could make to be safe. There was no other way around it. Doton Earth Barrier. Doton Mud Wall. Suton Water Wall. The different defensive jutsus were used simultaneously by multiple shinobi in response to the majestic flames that had been released by Naruto. The jutsu formed a large elemental wall around between them and the intense flames. The flames collided with the defensive jutsus in a heap, coming to a halt for a moment as they burned through the earth jutsus. Before they could move further, more Suton jutsus from the Kumo shinobi were released and the flames were stopped, creating a large smoke in the atmosphere. No one moved until the mist dispersed. By the time it dispersed, Kakashi was already gone along with his forces, but they were not far. You bastard. The leader of the enemy cursed Naruto. You used that jutsu knowing the only way to really counter it was if we used Suton, but with the mist all over the atmosphere, it would be difficult for us to track down those who retreated. Naruto blinked as if surprised. He shook his head. I'm not too smart for that. The Uzumaki said calmly. My purpose was just to incinerate as many as I could. A pity I got none in that attack. He paused as he looked up into the sky. Kuretsuchi came flying from the heavens, as if she had been flung from a distance. She crash-landed on the ground in a loud boom before straightening up to face the Uzumaki. Well, what do we have here? She said with a grin. Even someone like you would not possibly think of fighting against us. Unlike your father's jutsu, yours has a limit. Kuretsuchi-sama. A man walked up to the black-haired kunoichi. It appears that he can use both his hands. The woman frowned. It matters not. She said in a firm tone. They simply could not cower because the redhead was back to his full power. This was war and they wanted him dead, or alive, but many would be pleased with him dead. Kuretsuchi focused on the redhead once more. You would have been better if you hadn't allowed them to escape, but to fight with you. Oh well, if we capture you, it would make things interesting. Well, this really did change things. He wasn't expecting things to move in such way. He knew that there were reinforcement coming along the way, but he hadn't thought that they would be led by the Tsukikuji's granddaughter. It didn't mean that he was going to put his tail between his legs and run away from her. She was a child and did not frighten him the slightest. What did give him a chill down his spine was the murderous intent being directed straight at him by the many shinobi who didn't seem to share Kuretsuchi's thoughts of capturing him. They wanted to murder him, brutally so. It would be something called poetic justice. Naruto found it slightly amusing, but he wasn't going to allow something like that to happen. It would mean his death, and at this moment, it wasn't something he had planned up. The death god could happily collect the souls he would be sending his way, but his was not for the taking. If I capture you, what do you think will happen? I'm sure your grandfather will not be amused, Naruto said. This was surprising in every way, since when did he give himself time to casually chat with people who wanted to butcher him? He didn't even have the time for mental games that a freak like Orochimaru would love. Killing them was enough. He didn't have to mentally scar them before taking their lives. It would be a huge step if that were to happen, and certainly it would increase his fame. There was no denying that he wanted to make a name for himself, and capturing that Tsukikage's granddaughter would go some way to help with that fame he was looking for. Yes, the mission to attack Iwa supplies could go to hell now. This was much more important. Your arrogance seems to have no limits, Kuretsuchi said in disgust. If you think you can take on everyone here, then you're delusional, and the many people you have slaughtered have given you the idea that you're unstoppable. I think I can be. Naruto responded calmly. Currently, there is no one who betters me in ninjutsu in the whole of Konoha, and I will show this to you. I'm not just good with flames, but with other elements. I have not had the chance to do this, but I will show you. If you're going to stop me, you need to be able to negate all forms of ninjutsu. The redhead paused as his eyes narrowed. For now, the reason I had those Konoha people go away is because I didn't want them to be traumatized by my brutality. This is going to be a massacre. Unknown location. It was business as usual within the Akatsuki. Sasuke almost found it amusing that the elemental nations were at war and the organization wasn't much concerned about it, but rather, they were proceeding with the usual business. To be more specific, their real business. It was no longer the time to gather money by doing mercenary missions, now they were going to show their true colors by taking on their real missions. They were going on a Bajoa hunt, and Sasuke was positive that the only reason they had been gathered was because it was time to move. The major villages are at war. This makes things easier for us, but at the same time, a little more dangerous. Pain started. The danger was because now some Jinchurikis would not be alone as they would normally be, but now they would be in the company of other shinobi because they were in war. Nevertheless, those who got in the way would be removed. There was nothing and no one who was going to him from making steps towards peace. This petty war just did nothing but reinforce his ideal that this world had to be forced into peace. There was no need for the brutal murders that were occurring now, but because those people didn't know true pain, they were at it again. He would show them true pain. I thought we were going to have some fun with them like this. Kaizen offered his thoughts. Attacking the major villages now would be much simpler, and we could just threaten them to give us the Jinchurikis if we cannot find them. It wasn't the simplest way, but it was the most interesting way to do things, and would certainly be fun. Kaizen was sure of it. What was the fun in living a boring life? One got more out of life when she did some exciting things. There is no need for that. Pain said in a firm tone. Zetsu has located some of them. We already know that the one tail is in Sunigakure. Sasuke and Deidara will still handle that mission, but Toby. The man paused as his powerful eyes went towards the masked Uchiha. Will keep the Kasuke busy whilst you two handle that. You will move out as soon as we are done. I'm sure you're already close to the village by now. Hi Leader Sama. We should reach it by tomorrow. Sasuke responded calmly. Haiden and Kakuzu, Zetsu will contact you with the location of the two tails. She will be an easy target because she is currently alone. Once Sasuke and Deidara have collected their target, you two will have to move out and take care of her. We will extract both before they can realize what happened. A couple of minutes later, Nagato looked through the eyes Tendao at the streets of the Hidden Rain, the ever-crying village. For now, he was content with how things were moving. They were taking a step towards peace. Shouldn't we also go after the three tails as well? It will be an easy target since it has no Jinchuriki. Iwa's Jinchurikis are currently in pairs, that means we will have to send 4 after them, Konan said as she walked towards the Deva path. We will do that after we have sealed those two. The fact that the three tails is an easy taking means we don't have to stress about it. Nagato said. We also need to measure how the hidden villages will react to it. I am certain that they will not stop their war. Unlikely. Conan said with a nod. Zetsu says that Jinchuriki are primed to attack the hidden leaf, so we must see how that goes. But if anything, they are likely to be captured, and should that happen, I may have to fight the hidden leaf because they will be in possession of not just one Bajor, but three, and that will make them dangerous to our plans. We certainly cannot allow that to happen. Obito suddenly said, as if he had been eavesdropping. Should that happen, I will help you out. I can handle the Yondaime Hokage, and you can get the Jinchurikis from the hidden leaf. That is sorted then. Nagato said with a glance towards the masked Uchiha. Back with Naruto. Did these people really think he would just charge at them head-on without a proper strategy? He wasn't some sort of a bloodthirsty demon who lost all common sense at the smell of blood. He was a warrior who loved his life very much. He would not do something else reckless as charging in without the ability to dodge their bullets. The key here lied within his mobility. Without it, he would have just summoned the QB and let it go wild whilst he watched. Doing risky business was not in his DNA. Maybe he was both arrogant and a coward in the sense that he would not fight a battle he was not sure he could win. It was this mindset that has led his winning streak dating back to his embarrassing defeat to Uchiha Itachi. What a day that was, but here he was. Don't let him get close. Naruto was running towards the mass of enemies who wanted him to have a meeting with the death god, doing fast hand seals. By all accounts, it seemed as if he was going to charge head-on like a man who believed he could take on the whole world without breaking a sweat. But then he suddenly disappeared into a thin air. There was no sound, no flash of something. He just blurred out of existence in the blink of an eye. Search for him. Don't let him get too close. It was a shout that went through the battlefield. Yes, it would be suicidal allowing him get close. He would cut through them as if they were dummies if they made that mistake. Well, he could not call it a mistake if they could not stop him from getting close. Naruto suddenly appeared in the middle of hundreds of enemy forces, hands forming a seal around his mouth ready to release. Eyes went wide in shock, but before anyone could even shout that he was here, the Uzumaki released a deadly jutsu at point-blank range. Katan, Gauka Messetsu. The Uzumaki expelled an intense stream of flames from his mouth. The flames burnt through the very shinobi in front of him within seconds as they traveled forth before exploding into a wide sea of flames. Given Naruto's position when he released them, there was no time for the poor souls in the path of the jutsu to do anything to avoid them, or even do anything to block. The flames just exploded with the many enemies within them, consuming them as pained cries resounded around the battlefield. As many cried, the many more who were lucky enough not be in the path of the jutsu scattered away from the flames in shock. In just one move, the redhead had incinerated about 100. It hadn't taken minutes or anything, it had taken just a second to spit out flames, and their numbers were reduced. It was scary, especially when they thought of the possibility that he could do it again, any second now. Once again, Naruto flashed out of existence, and appeared inches away from the group that had escaped to his left side. Suton water explosion. Vast amounts of water exploded in the area, flowing around the battlefield like a sea. The water covered a wide range, causing many to stand within the harmless water. Well, it was harmless as it was, but Naruto slammed both his hands into the ground, and within a second, the water started steaming, then started pouring out of the water as it boiled. The Uzumaki jumped up into the air whilst doing hand seals. He was forced to look up as Kuretsuchi suddenly appeared above him before slamming a brutal kick straight on his forehead. He was sent crashing down like a bullet and could not stop, but luckily, it was away from the boiling water that had many, flashing away into a safe area. Doton earth spikes. Earth spikes were released from the ground. Naruto crashed into the earth spikes, hitting them with his back. His crash landing resulted in a loud boom that rocked through the battlefield as he leveled the spikes of earth. Before the Uzumaki could get out of the crater in his brutal landing, a dome sprouted around him, trapping him. Then there was an explosion that tore through the earth dome. Before anyone could celebrate success, a heavily bruised Naruto, with a burnt cloak suddenly appeared in front of a shinobi holding a long sword. Yeah. He started to the slightly spooked shinobi. I'm feeling pain right now, do you mind dying for me? Before the man could respond, the blade sliced through his neck in a second. Huh? The confused shinobi muttered as his world turned sideways, with his head falling off his shoulders. Naruto dispersed his sword as Kuretsuchi issued a command. Scatter, don't get close. They all disappeared within a second before the black-haired girl stared murderously at the Uzumaki. You must be excited with all that you have done so far. Admittedly, yes. Naruto responded calmly, but there was no smile on his face. You monster, have you no emotions or morals? She demanded. Look at this battlefield, look at my men. There were a few who were no longer standing, but down on their butts, looking at their burnt feet. Not everyone had escaped the boiling steam without it touching them to disastrous proportions. The water wasn't the deadly part, but the steam. The water could burn, but it was slow. The steam, on the other hand, was deadly enough to melt the skin of any human they came in contact with. It wouldn't kill you, but it was going to mess you up after some excruciating pain. You insignificant woman, do not talk about what is right or wrong with me. Your grandfather started this whole war out of petty reasons, and you dare question my morals? Naruto demanded with cold, fully opened eyes and inflicted fear upon everyone who looked into them. Naruto shook his head. I almost lost my cool. Then, how are you going to win this without getting close to me? You realize that I had my jutsu activated this whole time, and this is your response to it. But how are you going to attack me? You should know that I am very much capable of defense if I am being attacked. You can't defend forever. Pitiful. Naruto said as he removed his burnt upper cloth, leaving a naked chest. You see these wounds on me, they were not inflicted by an enemy, I had them whilst training. This power, I nearly killed myself trying to attain it. How I use it is up to my judgment. He shook his head. I'm talking nonsense now. Naruto said to himself. I will show mercy today, I will allow you to escape because really, I'm also running low on energy. However, should we meet again, no one will leave the battlefield with their lives. How mightily merciful of you. Kuretsuchi said with bitter sarcasm. What makes you think we will even do that? As you said, you're also running low on energy, we still have the numbers and the energy to fight you. Do you think with that in mind we will simply let you go knowing that should you be allowed to live you are just going to do something like this to our comrades? Just because you are being ungrateful, everyone here will die, but you will survive. As a spoil of war, however. Naruto said as he went through hand seals. Know that you have condemned everyone here to their deaths. Kochios no Jutsu. Chapter 26. This is something, isn't it? Naruto asked standing just beside a bloodied Kuretsuchi. The woman hadn't been willing to be captured peacefully, even after the Kyuubi had annihilated everyone in her command, and he was left facing him in battle. For just one mere human, the Kyuubi had refused to play with her, saying she wasn't even worth its effort, and had disappeared in a puff of smoke. He did have the trouble capturing her, it hadn't been an easy task, but he did it. This was the second time he was killing everyone in her command, leaving just her alone. Last time he had allowed her to escape. No, she had managed to escape with her life, but this time there was more benefit in capturing her than allowing her to escape. She was a precious granddaughter to the Tsukikage after all. Kuretsuchi glared murderously at the redhead. She wanted nothing more than to cut him open and feed pieces of his body to crows. She didn't hate him, she loathed him. This was a murderous man who has been a thorn in her side. Not just that, but he has killed her precious comrades in cold blood without even batting an eye or feeling remorse over it. It was something that she could not forgive. This has been nothing but a pain in her life. You will not get away with this. Kuretsuchi spat out venomously. Any attempts to escape had been tried and tested before, but she had failed. The bastard hadn't been arrogant enough to say she was defeated, he could just leave her as she was now. No, Even though she was beaten, he still sealed her chakra and bound her hands together with her legs, just to make sure she doesn't try to attack him. He hadn't been concerned about escaping, but being attacked from behind. Naruto smiled. "I sense you are mad," he said as if it was a discovery. "But why should you be mad? Do you have any reason to be mad, Kuretsuchi?" The redhead asked in a firm tone. He wasn't just teasing or messing with her, he was serious. Kuretsuchi was too mad to see the seriousness of the question, or even think deeply about it. She lashed out the moment the words reached her. She had every reason to be mad. After everything she has seen, how could she not be mad and infuriated? This wasn't the first time this was happening, it was the second time. "Are you freaking kidding me?" The black-haired kunoichi shouted furiously. "How can I not be mad? You killed my comrades for the second and then summoned your pet to slaughter many more," with a gleeful look on its face. There was no doubt in her mind that the Bajoa had been having fun swatting her shinobi around like flies. They were flies to it, and it had danced around quickly even in its size as it played a game of tag with the many jutsus they had sent towards it, thinking they would do some damage. But nothing happened. It just toyed with them until it released that Bajoa bomb that tore through the battlefield, and then went boom. It hadn't been a silent explosion, but for a moment, Kuretsuchi had thought that the world had gone silent and stopped. That was not the kind of jutsu made for shinobi to fight against. How could they protect themselves against a full-powered attack from the most powerful Bajoa? She was sure that demon could hold its own against Iwa's two Jinchurikis and still win. "This is war, you don't get to cry," Naruto said in a hardened tone. "Didn't your grandfather tell you that things like this happen in war? What were you thinking when you marched into the battlefield? You were going to happily slaughter Konoha shinobi, but because it has happened to you, you get mad and speak injustice. Shinobi are such rotten creatures. You kill, but don't want to be killed. You have no problems killing those you see as enemies, but when others do the same, you judge them and call them evil monsters. You damned disgusting hypocrites. I am right and you are wrong is one of the things that has made me resent the way shinobi live their lives, as such that I do not feel it a necessity to follow the standards of what it is considered right and wrong. You people only consider things right when it is you doing them, but when it is someone else, it is wrong. Even your justice is nothing but hypocrisy. You disgust me, so much more that I think I am doing this world a favor by slaughtering all of you." It wasn't to say that he was the good person by any stretch of imagination. Naruto knew by the standards of the world, and the people who loved judging others, he wasn't a good person. To so many who saw him as the enemy, he was a menace that had to be removed from the face of this world. Even so, he didn't go around calling other people things. There were some cases he felt judgment had to be delivered, but he didn't do it for some reason that many uphold. He only did what he felt was right, and when he felt like it. Isn't it the norm of this world? Everything you believed was right, and was the correct thing to do. It was the same thing with this woman. She believed that she was right, and he was wrong. He believed he was right, and she was wrong. But who was truly right and wrong? For Naruto, it didn't matter at this time. The winner of the war would be the one who would be right. Those with power are after all the ones who get to determine the standards of the world, one way or the other. It could be through some peaceful talks or force. Kuretsuchi stared. Had he just said that? She was being lectured and told on her ways by a man who was infamously called a monster by his bloody ways of killing people in the battlefield. She felt mad at herself for allowing this situation to happen like this. He was only saying this because he was the winner and she was the loser. She loved her village, but she could not deny that what he was saying made sense. Even her grandfather could not deny that the reasons for starting this war were petty, and this was war, anything could happen. He had told her the horrors of war. She was living it now, and it was not beautiful. This would have been happening to Naruto if she had won, and she would have been celebrating. Only winners got to celebrate in this world, and losers like her got to be lectured before being killed by trigger-happy bloodthirsty shinobi like this monster standing before her. It was just wrong. Even if he made sense, he was the bloody murderer who should be the one suffering, not her. So, what if we only consider things when it suits us? Kuretsuchi asked. Only those with power get to decide things. I should stop talking to you. Naruto said. I'm tempted to mutilate you right now, because of the nonsense you are spouting. I thought if we killed your grandfather you'd be suited to become the next Sakikage, but you're just as damaged as him. He paused, holding out his right hand as his flames started forming on the palm of his hand. In fact, I think I will be stopping future madness if I kill you now, he said in a cold tone. Kuretsuchi's heart started knocking at her ribcage furiously. She could face death now, this man could kill her within a second. She had seen him kill many more, killing wasn't a problem for him, he could do it even with his eyes closed. For a moment, she was afraid, not of the redhead, of death, because she was staring at it. She had been under the assumption that he would not kill her, but would hold her hostage because she was the granddaughter of the Tsukikage. She had been wrong, he would kill her right here and now. He must know that Onoki would not end the war because he had captured her. What if he didn't even want the war to end but wanted to continue killing? Didn't he just say that he sometimes feels like he was doing the world a favor by killing shinobi? Kuretsuchi masked her fear and stared defiantly. Do whatever you want, but I know that what you just did here is going to happen to Konoha's forces. It might have happened already by now. Naruto showed no emotion. You must be talking about Killer Bee. Kuretsuchi grinned. Bingo, but it isn't just him doing the damage, but the Raikage as well. Before they moved towards the biggest threat in your army, he was clearing the way for Kumigakure's shinobi to enter the Fire Nation. If that is so, there is no reason to keep you alive. Naruto said, moving the finished fire-style Rasengan towards Kuretsuchi's gut. The kunoichi closed her eyes waiting for death, but it did not come. Instead, Naruto just slammed his hand on her gut, causing her to spit out a mouthful of saliva before cursing his name. That would be easy to do, Naruto said calmly. Konoha doesn't know I have captured you, so I will keep you as my slave. You won't get to face death, every enemy we encounter you will watch them die, and if I get my way, I will make you suffer enough to wish for death, but I will not grant it. He turned around. Now, get up, we must get out of here. Do you expect me to walk like this? The only way I'm carrying you is if you don't have your legs. Naruto said. If you feel that you can't use them, I will remove them for you and then carry you. I will do the same if you try to hold me back. Kuretsuchi grit her teeth. At least remove the chains on my legs so that I can move freely, and if you are going to do that, you can free my hands as well. Naruto stopped and turned to face the woman. He thought for a few moments before nodding. But if you try anything I don't like, I will make you choose which hand you want to lose. If you can't choose, I will remove both. Do you understand me? The Oa kunoichi nodded firmly. This wasn't the kind of person who made idle threats. Kuretsuchi was certain that he would cut off her legs if he wanted. Taking life was as easy as crushing a bug. What about just cutting off her legs? For her survival, Kuretsuchi decided to play the part the redhead wanted of her. With Kakashi, the Jonin's forces came to a halt as they came across what appeared to have been a massive battlefield. It was apparent that humans were not fighting against other humans. Even if they had been, that person would not have been a normal person. Halt! The Jonin shouted as he rushed forward, his intestines twisting as a feeling of dread washed over him. The others were back when the Jonin came to an abrupt halt, wide-eyed in what he was seeing. There were bodies everywhere, dead corpses of Konoha shinobi. This was where Asumo was supposed to be stationed. This was where they were going to meet up with the man after their retreat. He wasn't expecting to find a field littered with bodies of his colleagues. The Jonin felt like sitting down. This was just too much to stomach. It appeared as if they had been ambushed, but there were no enemy shinobi lying anywhere and the ground was still hot. Things could not have happened the day before. Maybe earlier in the morning. What really could have happened here? Who could have done something like this? This was war, all right, and just like how he remembered it. The smell of burnt flesh, it was still the same, but it didn't please him that nothing had changed. No, this was the sickening part of a war that caused many to develop murderous feelings of hate and many to experience unbearable pain. He had experienced it too. Yet, somehow, he could not bring himself to feel anger this time. This was war. He knew things like this happened. His sensei had done something like this in the past war. This must be what it felt like, and maybe even worse. Not maybe their hatred for the Yondaime had been something infamous. I had a bad feeling, but I wasn't expecting to see this, Guy said as he stopped by Kakashi's right side. The man was speaking in a strangely serious tone. This matter called for it. He could smile and say something, but this wasn't the time. They were in serious trouble. They had just escaped death from the other side, and now they were seeing that of their colleagues had faced death. They didn't have the luck of being saved. This was going to hit the others hard. We have to send a report to the leaders immediately, Kakashi stated calmly. We have to come up with a new way to handle things here. We might even have to regroup. Obviously, focusing on their strengths as individuals wasn't going to win this war. Kakashi had known that numbers didn't ultimately mean victory, but even with all their power, endurance was key here, and they did not have the stamina to fight all day long without taking breaks. But in the meantime, it would be best for us to venture deep into the fire country, the Jonin said. The fear of standing as one group was that Kumo and Iwa would have an easier time to pick them apart, as they would simply unleash their numbers on them. It would prove difficult to handle for them, and they would be annihilated. This way brought about their best chances of winning and survival, because the enemy would have to divide their numbers as well. Guy nodded. We should move out now, he said. There was no reason to stay here any longer. Who knows? Maybe the enemy was even hiding somewhere and would get a jump on them if they lingered around. It was not the time to mourn their losses. They still had to fight the war. They were still alive to continue with the battle. Kakashi signaled everyone to follow him with nothing else to say. Later that night, Onoki stood alone away from the others as he stared into the moonless heaven, thinking deep. He was most concerned about the report he had received about his granddaughter. Her forces had been wiped clean, and she was nowhere to be found. Of the remains that were in the battlefield, there was no sign of hers anyway. Not even the best sensors could pick up her scent from the battlefield. Well, it was littered with burnt corpses, and the Kyuubi's malicious chakra was all over the place, a place that smelled of nothing but death. You could not expect to find the scent of a single person. But, because it had been his granddaughter, they had searched for her. They had tried to find her because she was an important member of Uegakure, much more important than many who were out there. Considering that her opponent ended up being Uzumaki Naruto, it was safe to assume that she was no longer alive. Ever since the redhead broke into the international stage, he has not been known for allowing his enemies to live. No, he killed everyone he defeated in battle. Onoki didn't even think that there was a possibility that his Kuretsuchi had somehow managed to escape him. If that was the case, she would have sent a message already, and that is if she had managed to somehow stay alive. Naruto would not have wasted time in burning an entire forest if he was sure she was within it. This was war, such things did happen, but he hadn't thought he would lose her so soon. Who was going to take over from him? There was no one he deemed worthy of leading Uegakure. If anything, it seems he has only led his village to ruin, and it would be worse if his village does not win this war. Not everyone agreed with the war after all, but he had forced it because he was the leader, and no one could say anything unless someone was attempting to usurp his power. If that was the case, he would have had that person killed for treason. Maybe this was the price for starting a petty war. He knew that there would be people lost in the war, and he would be responsible for it as the commander-in-chief. Are you going to stay here all night and mope around about the loss of your granddaughter? A questioned as he walked up beside the Tsukikage. You have been alive for long enough. You should know that death doesn't pick sides. Just because they are related to you doesn't mean that they won't perish in the war. Onoki frowned at the fact that he was being lectured by a mere child. The Raikage was still an emotional boy to him. He hasn't lived for so long as he has lived. The experiences he had could not be compared to what I had. Yet, the boy was lecturing him. Pitiful. I know that. Onoki said in a firm tone. And I wasn't moping. I didn't want to get into an argument about that. I'm surprised you still made her face him though. When he was still a brat, he defeated Uchido in the most brutal fashion, and she was a Jinchuriki having been trained as a weapon since a tender age. She wasn't going to face him, it wasn't the plan. He just appeared. Onoki said. But this was war, anything could happen. He shouldn't curse that it had happened. If you do think how he is being used by Konoha, he is like a weapon. Well, I can't disagree with that. Said with a nod. If you were not moping, what strategy were you coming up with? It is time my Jinchurikis do their mission. I will send a message which will probably reach them by tomorrow, and they must attack Konoha with its defenses weak. The time isn't right, but it is now or never. They can't hide forever, they will be found soon. Onoki said. We should also increase our efforts to penetrate into the fire country. My brother has broken a defense, and I have sent him on another mission along with Darui and a few of my men. Their mission is important and will be an ambush, the Yondaime Reikage said. For now, Drea is proving to be a problem. There is no movement on his side, so I will go out to face him. If we remove him, we will cripple Konoha. Onoki nodded. I like that idea. He said. Maybe I will join you, but there are still some things I must do. Onoki paused for a moment. You say your brother is going for another mission, what kind of a mission is it really? And what about your other Jinchuriki? He was risking his own Jinchuriki by sending them to Konoha. There was a chance that they would be captured in that village. Although that was a possibility, he was certain that it would not occur without them doing some damage to the Hidden Leaf. If not, the mission would be a massive failure, and it would not reflect well on him. Has managed to wipe out an entire company of Hidden Leaf forces, and he has managed to get his granddaughter possibly killed by Konoha. Even though the mission tomorrow would be massive, the risks were also high. If something does happen to Roshi and Han, he would no longer be on equal footing with the Reikage because already he would have lost 3 vital pieces to his plan. It would mean that he would have to be careful, and now he would have to discuss things earnestly to make sure that the Reikage doesn't try to stab him in the back in his weak moment. You're not the only one risking it. Said in a firm tone. He is going to ambush Uchiha Fugaku. I have heard that he is now separated from his son, so that will make things a little easier. I thought it was a good chance to eliminate one of Konoha's elders. With the loss of one eye, he might not be as powerful as he was before, but he is still a powerful person who holds much influence. For the future, it would be good to get rid of him. Onoki just nodded. He had no complaints about that. What about your other Jinchuriki? We can't allow the Mizukage's forces join with Konoha. Said, but that was only what he was willing to say. He didn't go any further from that. I'm surprised that Minato has yet to take the battlefield though. Well, his son plays the role for him. Onoki said with clear hatred towards father and son. Naruto can fill the void just as his father can in the battlefield. Since Konoha is stretched, it is safe for Minato to be at Konoha since they don't know what might occur. He must know if he isn't in the village, some might try to use the chance to attack. But there is still the Sandaime. Despite his age, he is still a powerful force. Then we just have to do enough to force him to come out. Said. But first, we must deal with Drea. He is closest. Naruto moves around a lot, so saying we are going after him would be a fruitless pursuit. How do you plan on dealing with the Sannin? I have also heard that Tsunade is out there as well, but not active in the fighting. She is handling the medical operations. Onoki said. He then grinned. How about after we deal with Drea, you send your Jinchuriki towards her location? It would be devastating to the Leaf in the same way it would be if we just attacked their food supplies. With Naruto. Kuretsuchi was sitting across Naruto. There was a small fire separating them. She was glaring at him, But he hadn't made any attempt to talk to her or even acted as if he noted that she was glaring at him at all. Any attempt to say anything had been ignored bluntly. Well, maybe the silence was good for her. The redhead had said if she continued speaking, he would end up killing her. It was best that she stays on the safe side of things with him. The reason she was staring at him now was that they had finally stopped after traveling all day. He hadn't said anything to her, just stopped and prepared himself. It was obvious that they were deep in the fire country, and he felt safe enough to even start a fire and even entertain the thought of camping out here. Still, it's not the reason she was staring. She was hungry and thirsty, but the redhead hadn't given her anything. She was thinking of breaking the silence because of it. She had been in a fight, and had been forced to travel all day without taking anything to replenish her lost energy, not to mention her chakra was sealed. She was nothing but a mere trained civilian in her current state. Naruto suddenly looked at the woman with fully opened eyes. Kuretsuchi realized that she was only seeing them so close for the first time. When he wasn't in battle, he looked normal, not scary at all, but she could never forget that image he painted in her mind. The Uzumaki almost smiled at the murderous look Kuretsuchi was giving him, but his expression did not change. She had every reason to wish for his death. It was a pity she wasn't going to get it done though. Between the two of them, she was the one who was likely to end up dead. I want to interrogate you before I leave you here, Naruto said to the Iwa-jonin. I have other important duties that I must attend to tomorrow, so I cannot afford to be with you. Besides, I'd like to keep you away from Konoha for now at least. Kuretsuchi didn't like the thought. It was as if he wanted to keep her just for his personal gain, as if she was his tool. Well, he had said she was a spoil of war. The thought really left a bitter taste in her mouth. She would have been grinning if their situation was reversed, but chances of that were slim. She would have to get a drop on him in order to escape. Why? Why I am not giving you to Konoha? Naruto asked, but didn't wait for Kuretsuchi to respond. I told you, your ideals make you a dangerous person to allow to continue living. Ironically, that is what you people say about me, but of course for different reasons. In any case, my father is too kind, no one will pay for this war. I find that offensive to those who have died already. Your grandfather started a petty war. It is more like the same reason you people decided to destroy Izoshogakure. There are consequences for war, and you will be the consequence. It is either you, or your grandfather who should die in this war. If I'd simply left that for my father, he'd hand you over to Iwa as a bargaining chip. Kuretsuchi narrowed his eyes, all emotions drained from her face. It was obvious now, he was not going to allow her to live. He was going to kill either her or her grandfather as punishment for starting the war. The only way she was going to survive is if her grandfather dies in the battlefield, if not, he was going to kill her without anyone knowing. That didn't answer what he wanted to interrogate her about anyway. What do you want to know? Kuretsuchi asked. Maybe she could use this as her bargain for him to release her. I know that Iwa's Jinchuriki are around Konoha, but I don't know their exact location, and for what reason they are there. He paused before adding. Maybe I'm just afraid to admit that they are planning something sinister because it would piss me off. And I fear that reality, so what is it that they are planning, Kuretsuchi? The black-haired woman grinned. Why ask? You should know already if you know that much. She said. But I will tell you anyway. Once my grandfather learns that I have been captured, he is going to be mad, and I'm sure he is going to order them to move. They are not just going to threaten Konoha to surrender. She shook her head. They are going to go on a rampage within the Hidden Leaf, destroying everything in their path. We had the Uzumaki Sealing Corps killed because we didn't want them to interfere. Your mother is likely the only person capable of doing something, but she can be removed from the picture. Your father can't do anything without summons and Uzumaki. Drea is probably using the toads in a battle and you are here. Stopping both will surely not be easy. They will destroy Konoha and who knows, maybe wipe out your kind. There was no Uchiha powerful enough to cast Denjutsu on the Jinchurikis, so they were safe. They had planned things accordingly to make sure nothing went wrong. Even this cursed man looking at her wasn't there now, so if they launched a surprise attack, it would break the village hidden in leaf, and that would bring them much closer to victory. I was right, killing you will be doing this world a favor. Naruto stated in a calm tone. You'd be willing to kill innocent people who are not even participating in the war. I would hold no grudges against those being killed in the battlefield, but attacking innocent people, that goes far beyond what I can tolerate. This is a war, anything can happen. Kuretsuchi said in a firm tone. Yes, this is war. Naruto said as he stood up. He walked over to Kuretsuchi and held out his right hand. I'm sure you have family back at Iwa, and would murder anyone who threatened to harm them. I also have a family back at Konoha, my beloved sister, Izumi, parents, my clan. I cannot tolerate the existence of anyone who threatens them. Naruto cut off the woman by grabbing her by the throat. I will need my energy when I run back to Konoha to handle those two, but this means I must abandon my mission to welcome the Mizukage. I will release my anger on the way back, and when I handle those two. He paused as he tilted his head to the side. You will die by strangulation. A twisted part of me wants to watch you fight for your breath, as the lights go out slowly. Konoha. Minato was surprised to see Naruto by his office on this day without the Mizukage. He wasn't supposed to leave the battlefield, except for when he was going to accompany Mei, and that was all. Something major had to have happened for the redhead to come all the way back. The Yondaime didn't wait too long to ask as soon as Naruto settled down. Has something happened? Naruto nodded. Karin should be in the village. The Uzumaki started in a calm tone. Have you seen her? Minato shook his head. I haven't had the time to be home. You know, with everything going on, you can't afford to relax because you don't know what is happening and when the enemy might strike. As Konoha's last piece of defense, I have to be alerted at all times. Naruto merely nodded. He could understand, it was his job after all. When you took the role of a leader of something, you accepted the responsibilities that came with the job as well as the sacrifices you must make. He was a leader of his clan, and he could understand that. I engaged Orochimaru, he is dead, and Kuretsuchi's forces as well. But something much more alerting forced me to change plans to return here quickly. Back up a little, Minato said. You faced Kuretsuchi? The Yondaime asked. That wasn't something that he had been expecting so early. But if Naruto had faced her and was still here, did it mean that he had won or he had forced them to retreat? Minato quickly shook his head. This was war. Naruto would not allow enemies to retreat when he knew that it wasn't defeat. If they retreated, they were going to fight in another battlefield, having regrouped and energized. Naruto's motto was that enemies were to be killed, not allowed to walk free. An enemy to Naruto was no different from a bloodthirsty murderer who killed people for fun. If you did face her, did you capture her? But Naruto wasn't the one who captured enemies, was he? Not since he left military police. It has been death over and over again. I did, Naruto said. But last night, she gleefully spoke of how Uchiha Jinchurikis would go on a rampage in Konoha, destroying everything, killing innocent people. I couldn't tolerate her. Even I, who have been accused of being a demon, do not smile as she did. Besides that, it was unforgivable. Minato was most concerned about Uchiha Jinchuriki attacking Konoha. They already knew they were somewhere in the Fire Country, but he hadn't thought that Onoki would take such a measure. He didn't even consider sneaking Naruto into the Earth Country so that he could allow the Kyuubi to go on a rampage within the Iwa. Even if this was war, there was a line that did not have to be crossed. Well, considering that the reason to start the war were petty, he should not be surprised. But still, to think that the man would stoop so low to even think of killing innocent people. This was unprecedented. No one had taken such a measure before. Really, it was despicable. I can see why you are back, Minato said in a serious tone. I have not been able to find the precise location, but our second Karin is said to be a very good sensor. She can sniff them out for us, and we will get them. I doubt they will be able to get into the village with the Anu presence all around, so they might attack from afar. Naruto said. Minato frowned. Bujoa have long-range attacks which are really devastating. The man said. We will have minus. Before he could go on, an Anu dropped by and gave him a scroll. Minato quickly opened the scroll, and then frowned as he read its contents. The Akatsuki attacked Suna and now Raza is asking for my assistance to chase after them. He has already left for them, and has left a clear trail. Minato said. I assume they took off with his son. Naruto responded. And leaving by himself means he is assumed that Konoha will aid him. I wouldn't help him, but for your ideals and conscience you will, isn't that right, father? You are here. Minato said. I don't have to worry about Konoha, but I cannot leave before we have handled the Jinchuriki situation. I can easily teleport to Suna once things are done. Having said that, we need to go in a hurry. Naruto nodded as he stood up. Mother will subdue the other whilst I handle the second one. There are two, and whilst I'm holding back the other, there is no guarantee that the other one won't attack Konoha instead of trying to save his partner. Before Minato could stand up, another Anu appeared in the office once again, but before he could say anything there was an explosion by the side of the village gates. Just outside of Konoha. Both Han and Roshi had transformed into their Bujoa forms, and were just away from Konoha. Roshi had launched a Bujudema that had crashed by the gates of the Hidden Leaf, setting off a huge explosion that destroyed the large gates. Han really didn't want to do this, but he was still here. Roshi didn't seem to have a problem, but perhaps that was because he was well acquainted with the Tsukikage. This was just wrong, but they were still doing it. Well, it was war, one didn't have the time to be considering what was wrong or right, it was more about a fight for survival. The message had come for them to strike because Konoha had killed Uwa's future leader, and so they were on the move ready to lay siege in the Hidden Leaf. Han would rather occupy the village than destroy innocent people, but the stubborn man beside him wanted to carry out the mission. Minato flashed in front of the two Jinchuriki with Kushina beside him. A second later, Naruto appeared as well. I'd like to believe that Jinchuriki are not just weapons, but people with the ability to discern right and wrong. I expect especially that from you two who are the oldest Jinchurikis alive. Minato said to the two. The others are just children, and you expect them to follow orders even though they don't agree with them. If they were raised as weapons, then they would simply do as told. Kushina was holding both her hands together preparing herself. She hadn't thought that she would have to do this again, but she was here. At least this time, she was with her son. It was the first time she was entering a battlefield with her son. It made her somewhat happy despite the situation. Konoha's yellow flash. Roshi said, looking down at the small form of the Yondaime Hokage and his family. You're the man who forced Iwa to accept a truce in the last war. He began charging another Bujudema. Minato quickly took out his three-pronged kunais, getting the sense that the man wanted to attack them. It would make things easier for them if they got rid of them first before moving towards the others. He could not just move out of the way of the attack because it would reach Konoha, and if it was so, there would be massive destruction. The Hidden Leaf was already panicking, but the Sandaime was surely on standby now, in his battle gear. As a precautionary measure, civilians were being moved to safe places, but it was a mess at the moment because everyone was starting to remember the Kyuubi incident years ago. Bujudema. Roshi let it rip, and the black jutsu tore through the ground as it moved towards the three-leaf shinobi. Minato jumped ahead, heading straight into the path of the Bujora bomb whilst doing hand seals. Hiration Dorai. The Yondaime enacted a space barrier in front of him. The barrier was marked the Hiration formula. The tailed beast ball came in contact with it, and was consumed by it. A second later, a large explosion occurred a distance away. Han was upon the three within seconds despite his large size. The right foot of the Bujoa crashed down towards the three. They all jumped away as the large foot crashed on the ground in a loud boom, creating a sizable crater. Chakra chains burst forth from the ground, and quickly wrapped around the Bujoa, holding it down. The Bajor tried to resist the pressure, but it could not break the chains, and was ultimately kept from moving. Minato flashed behind Roshi, causing the man to turn back to face the Yondaime as he had sensed him. Roshi drove a punch down towards the man. Minato jumped up to avoid the powerful punch that crashed down into the ground with a loud boom. Minato was just in front of him. After avoiding his punch, Roshi tried to smack the Yondaime with his left, but Minato disappeared in a flash of yellow. Before the transformed Jinchuriki could twist to look for the man, chakra chains burst forth from the ground, getting a hold of him. He tried to use his chakra to burn the chains, but he could not use his element. As he struggled, trying to break free, Roshi spoke. "These must be the chains they warned us about," he said. "I underestimated them. Who would think that a jutsu created by a human could hold back something as monstrous as a Bajor?" He had been told of it, he hadn't seen it. Of course, he hadn't believed it. But why couldn't he use his chakra? Why did he even feel like it was being suppressed anyway? Minato was relieved that they had managed to tie down both Bajors quickly before more damage could be done. They had avoided anything disastrous now. He could breathe a sigh of relief. The Yondaime Hokage allowed himself to smile. The smile quickly disappeared as he turned to the mother of his children. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked in a worried tone. "I held down the QB after it was extracted from me," Kushina said in a slightly deadpan tone. "Don't you think I can hold this? Besides, this isn't the real Bajor, this is a transformed Jinchuriki, so it makes things a little easier. You know, I can't help but be worried," Minato said with a smile. "The seal on the chains will suppress the Bajor's power, and they will be forced to return to normal in a moment. With the chains still on them, they will be captured quickly," Kushina said calmly. Minato nodded. "I can go now knowing everything is well. The Sandaime will handle everything. Tell him I will be back as quickly as I can," Minato said as he turned to face Naruto. Naruto is struggling though. The redhead was on his knees, panting, but the chains were still holding firm, and the transformation was being undone. "That is curious," Kushina said. "He must be really worn out," he said before disappearing in a flash of yellow. He appeared right beside Naruto. "I'm just going to teleport right to Gaara. When I fixed his seal, I also placed the Hirashing seal on his formula, as I had done with your mother. Are you going to be fine?" Naruto just nodded. Minato disappeared in a flash of yellow. A couple of seconds later, the whole area was surrounded by a horde of Anbu led by the Sandaime Hokage. Once Han's transformation was undone, Naruto closed his eyes. That was the end of that episode. He was glad it was over. For now, he really needed to sleep off his weariness. He had fought Orochimaru yesterday, then Kuretsuchi's people, and had been forced to travel all night when the threat was evident to Konoha. It wasn't chakra, but his body just could not handle the pressure anymore. The lights went out after those thoughts, but the redhead didn't hit the ground. The Sandaime caught him before looking at him carefully. There was no need to worry, he told himself. The redhead was just tired. He assumed he may have been forced to leave a battlefield to come here to protect Konoha from the danger. The Sandaime looked over to Kushina, who rushing over to him. "He is fine," the old man said. "Are they not going to cause any trouble?" he asked of the Jinchurikis. Nothing was restraining them now. "For now, no," Kushina said as she took Naruto from the Sandaime. "They are still suffering side effects of the suppression, but I suggest you seal away their chakra quickly before taking them in," the woman said, with her eyes only on Naruto. The Sandaime nodded and gave the order. "Take them to the special holding cells," the old man commanded. He then looked back at the side of the destroyed gates. Now all that is left is restoring calm. There was an explosion that occurred within the village the moment the Sandaime Hokage spoke those words. The old man left Naruto with Kushina and returned to the village. The first thing he saw were the crumbling faces of the cages in the Hokage monument, the next was the burning hospital, and then there was the panic spreading through the village like it was a wildfire. "An Anbu dropped by the Sandaime who did this?" The old man demanded. Either Kumo or Iwa, the culprits are dead, they killed themselves the moment they set off the explosions. The man said. So the moment we lost focus on the village and focused on the Bajois they were attacking, the Sandaime said. He didn't think those two cages would stoop so low to attack their village like this. If it wasn't enough that they'd lead Bajois into their village for the purpose of destruction, they have also done this? The Sandaime Hokage frowned. If he were Danzo, he would have thought of retaliating in the same manner. With Deidara, the Akatsuki member was sitting on his large bird, riding away from the sand country, with an unconscious small body of Subaku no Gaara lying beside him. Sasurai was back, engaging the Kasuke in a battlefield. Perhaps it had been to settle some things with the leader of his former village, but the puppet master had decided it made more sense for him to fight the pursuing Kasuke than him. Deidara hadn't put in arguments, it was the best choice for him to leave with Gaara as he was the one with better mobility. His partner could have wanted just to add the Kasuke to his collection of puppets. The man had the previous Kasuke, so it wasn't unthinkable that he would make his little collection of previous leaders of Tsunagakure. Whilst in his thoughts, eyes looking at the partly cloudy way ahead of him, Deidara's eyes nearly widened when the Yondaime Hokage appeared in a flash of yellow. Minato moved faster than the blonde could finish his thought. The Yondaime drove the palm of his right hand towards the side of Deidara's face, slamming into him. He pushed the man to the side slightly and before grabbing Gaara, he jumped away from the bird and landed. He looked at the young boy for a moment, before looking at the descending bird. The pointed mouth of the bird crashed on the ground where Minato was standing. The Yondaime had dodged it, jumping up slightly to avoid the strike. He landed on the bird and looked at Deidara. My target here was this child, but you're a member of the Akatsuki. If I simply let you go, it would be naive of me. You will forgive me, but I will make this quick. With Gaara on his left, Minato held out his right hand, forming a Rasengan. You think you can handle me that easily, Chen? Deidara questioned before flashing away from the bird. He appeared above the ground. Taste my art, Yondaime. Katsu. Boom. The bird turned into a loud explosion that tore through the sandy ground, causing the sand to blast sideways, along with small gusts of winds. Deidara had to shield his eyes as gravity started to pull him downwards before he landed. Minato suddenly flashed above the ground on Deidara's left side. Rasengan. The Yondaime slammed the Rasengan on Deidara's upper body. Minato was forced to look to the side where he had placed Gaara before flashing to Deidara. It had been safer to do so. He simply could not attack with the child on him, it would have been risky if something had happened. Minato only managed to witness that familiar mask disappearing and the voice speaking. I should have known that you'd try this, but I simply cannot allow you to take him so casually. We will meet again, Yondaime. The man vanished. Minato frowned. He could no longer feel the seal on Gaara. It was as if he was no longer present in this world, and he had managed to get him. This was disappointing. Everything had gone according to plan until that man showed up. It was just like last time, everything was proceeding smoothly until he showed up. It was sad that he was not able to save Gaara, but he had managed to get one of the enemies. He looked down at Deidara. The man was still alive. He would have to make do with this and present the man to Raza as evidence that he had Tri-. Deidara suddenly caught Minato's foot in an iron grip. The man was grinning, a single hand seal held. Why you marked me W when you appeared earlier? He said. I should have known, but this is the end of the road. Why Yondaime? Boom. About 30 minutes later, Minato found the Yondaime Kasuke sitting on a black object. The man was bruised and bleeding. Looking around, he could see several destroyed puppets lying around the area. It was no doubt it had been a massive battle. The man had been fighting an S-rank criminal. He had been quicker in dealing with his opponent, well because he was fast. Raza looked at Minato. The Yondaime had some bruises, but he was fine. It was obvious that he too had been in battle. He just didn't know if the man had been fighting for Konoha or for his cause. He would not be surprised if it was the former Konoha was actually at war, a war he had refused to take part in. even though it would mean more of Konoha shinobi would die because of it. Raza smiled bitterly as Minato drew closer. You must resent me for the choice I made, and then asking for your assistance even when knowing that Konoha faces a major battle for survival. The man said. It wasn't fair that he could get to ask the man for help when he could not help out the man. Minato's reasons for refusing would be understandable. Even if the man says he didn't get the message, he would have understood. Konoha was at war and he just wanted his son back. Not at all. Minato said calmly, but he wasn't smiling. As a Kage, your decision was understandable, but as an ally, I could not understand it, especially given all that Konoha has done for Suna in its time of need. There have been times the village was struggling financially after the Wind Daimyo refused fund them. He had been gracious and sold many goods to Suna at a lower price and even gave them some mission requests just so they could make do while they think of a strategy to sort out their situation. It wasn't that Konoha was healthy when he offered his help, but he had thought it was best to help someone in need. It was apparent that not everyone shared his thoughts. I regret that, but I thought I was doing what is best for my village. Raza said. Maybe I could have offered my assistance, personally, and a few men. That would not have put any risk to my village, but I did not consider that at all. Perhaps at the pressure of my council, but I still make the final decisions. The man paused for a moment before speaking once more. I had no one to turn to. We don't exactly have friends. A reason that should have encouraged you to assist us in this war. Minato said in a firm tone. When you only have one friend, it is best to treasure that friend, especially one loyal as us. Raza had nothing to say to it. I'm sorry for taking your focus away from the war, but when they took my son, I had no one to turn to. Suna isn't as blessed as Konoha is. Minato didn't respond to that. He merely threw Deidara's hand towards Raza before speaking. That is what remains of Deidara, but unfortunately, I failed to save your son. The same man who released the Kyuubi appeared and took him away whilst I was busy with Deidara. I shared with you what I have on him, so you should not ask how he managed to get away. The Yondaime Kasage was silent for a few moments before responding. Thank you, Minato. My men should be here soon, you can go back. I heard that Kiri is going to join you. They are not exactly joining, but just going to stand on guard in the outskirts of Konoha in case the enemy breaks through. Then will they fight, but I'm going to join soon, so they might not fight at all. Raza nodded. Suna will act in the same manner as Kiri will. You have my thanks. Minato said before turning away. I'm sorry I could not save your son. The Yondaime then disappeared in a flash of yellow. Konoha. Uzumaki compound. Naruto's eyes slowly opened as he awoke from his short sleep. The surroundings were familiar in the sense that he was in his room. There were 3 people within the room, all beside his bed. Naruto turned around and found the eyes of the Uzumakis looking at him. Oni-sama. Karin started as she jumped onto the bed atop of him. She hugged him as he lay before speaking again. I was worried about you. She said with her eyes closed, her ears listening to the beat of her brother's chest. Naruto raised both his hands and wrapped them around his younger sister. He stayed quiet for a few moments before speaking. Your brother was a little tired from the heavy lifting your father is making me do. You know he likes making me work hard. The redhead said in a calm tone. I'm glad you're fine. Kushina said with a smile. We've had to keep everything a secret to avoid panic. You know people like to exaggerate over little things, especially in this village. She took a step closer to the bed. Come on, Rin, we have to allow your brother to rest a little. He has to go out again. Again. Karin all but shouted as she turned to look at her mother. Naruto got up to sit on the bed. He smiled at his younger sister. Don't worry, you know your Oni-sama is too powerful to be harmed by ordinary people. I will be back soon, that I promise you, my dear sister. Promise. I promise. After everything, your brother will even take you to see our ancestral home Uzu. Azumi will be with us, does that sound okay? Karin nodded before jumping off the bed. She followed her mother out of the room, with Izumi right behind them. The redhead closed the door after the two left and pressed her back against it for a moment as she faced her thoughts. Your father wanted to speak with you the moment you awoke because you have to leave the village again. Izumi spoke in a deliberately slow tone. But I want to be selfish for once. I want to have you all to myself before you leave. Can you grant that to me, Naruto? Naruto stared at the strange look on Izumi's face. He didn't say anything as she walked over to him, her hands held together. She climbed on the bed and faced him. Are you sure you want to go on that path? We have so far avoided it, but if you want to walk on it, I will grant you that wish. Naruto said in a quiet tone. Though to say I'm granting the wish would be misleading, I guess this is something I've held back from doing. Minato's office. Minato smiled as Naruto appeared in the office. He had been with the Sandaime Hokage since his return from the sand. I'm glad you awoke quickly. The Yondaime said. The smile that had been on his face when he saw his son was now gone. But I will have to apologize because I have to send you out again. You cannot linger around here for so long, especially since the reports we received are not painting a good picture in how things are proceeding in the battlefield. There was no one else he could ask of this. He knew he was asking too much, but Naruto was his son. He had to push Naruto and the rest would follow. If he was not willing to sacrifice his son, would other people willingly allow him to lead their children in battle? Even if they did not have a choice on the matter, it was fair if he pushed those close to him first before he pushed others. In response to his father, Naruto merely shrugged as he walked over to the window of the office. He stared at the streets of the Hidden Leaf for a couple of moments before glancing back at the office at the Sandaime to be precise. It was only for a moment. I was only tired. Besides, this is war and I am a shinobi. We cannot rest until our enemy is. He paused for a moment before speaking. Defeated. He finished. The Uzumaki had considered saying annihilated. Really, if it were up to him, their only way to win this would be to annihilate enemy forces until the remaining few decide to give up, seeing that they had no chance to even stage a fight back, or just land a successful hit. Then he could allow them to live. True. The Sandaime responded. You must have taken a lot to crumble like that. Yesterday, I had to blow up a couple of Orochimaru's hideouts before battling the snake itself. After which, I was forced to run over to Kakashi because I heard they were going to be ambushed by Kuretsuchi. Upon reaching them, I had them retreat before fighting the enemy by myself. Once that was over, I had to escape that battlefield to avoid enemy forces. Later at night, I was told of Iwa's sinister plot, and was once again forced to travel almost all night to get here. I had not even rested enough here. He eyed the Sandaime before continuing. Maybe tonight will provide me with some much-needed rest. It was something that the Sandaime thought would not be done by the redhead, but he was happy it had happened. Yet, he was a little displeased that the redhead had killed Kuretsuchi. She could have been a useful bargaining tool with Iwa, but they didn't need to bargain on anything, did they? How did things go on your end? I got Deidara and Raza got Sasurai, but that Madara got away with Gaara. Minato said with a slight frown. The sand will join us soon. With Kiri on the way, I think I can leave the village anytime soon to make things happen. We should wrap this war up soon without sacrificing any more of our shinobi. They will be going after Uchiha now. Naruto said. I guess she will be the first person I will go to after leaving here. I will summon one half of the Kyuubi to cut off those who have already made it in the Fire Country. The Bajoi should be enough to handle that whilst I go after Uchiha. Why would you go out of your way to save her? The Sandaime asked, all in the name of curiosity. Because I told her we would meet again in the battlefield. Besides, should I manage to save her from the Akatsuki, we have 3 enemy Jinchurikis and the Kyuubi. A single threat of getting the Ukas to wave their wands to manipulate the Jinchurikis to attack them, and Onoki will be forced to surrender or risk annihilation. The Sandaime nodded. When you take into account that we will be having both Suna and Kiri supporting us, Even though Onoki is stubborn, he will be forced to admit defeat despite how humiliating it will be. Then you just have to get Yujiro, and we win this war. Minato said. I'm not too sure about manipulating the Jinchurikis using the Sharingan. Well, it will do as a threat, especially if you are the one saying it. The Yondaime said, knowing that both Onoki and A would call him a bluff. Naruto just shook his head. You must do it, father. You cannot sidestep everything and expect me to do every dirty little thing for you. Your decision to allow Onoki and A to get away with their past actions is what allowed this to happen in the first place. If you want me to do everything, I won't just make a threat. I will make sure both Onoki and A are dead and that there is no one left remotely powerful enough to be a Kage in both villages. I heard you. Minato said with a sigh. There is no need to go that far. I guess I have to show myself as a Kage because if I don't, this will happen again. I want peace, but I cannot allow my kindness to endanger this village. Once I have Yujiro, I must return as quick as I can because Kumo will surely be on my tail by then. Minato shook his head when Naruto said those words. Well, if you didn't say that, I would be worried that you were no longer Naruto. The Yondaime Hokage said. Nevertheless, don't you think it would be best if you're being chased you summon the Kyuubi to do some damage? Naruto shook his head. I cannot risk losing Yujiro. Besides, we are not the only ones who use Fuinjutsu. There can be no doubt about that. If we make reckless moves, we will be in trouble. You're being careful, the Sandaime Hokage said. Well, I have not been alive for this long with the enemies I have by being stupid. Naruto said calmly. I will see you in my return, the redhead said before disappearing in a burst of flames. The Sandaime looked at Minato, smiling. Your son has been pulling a lot of weight in this war. He has so far done much more than what others have. That's what he wants. I have given him so many duties, and I haven't heard him really complaining about it. Naruto trained to fight to be the best, this is his chance, the Yondaime said. If things proceed according to plan, will you take a hand in dealing with both A and Onoki? We cannot allow this act to go unpunished. The third nodded yes, he said. I will have a hand in it, but Minato, the hand must be firm if we are going to avoid such instances occurring again. I understand that, Minato said. Are we sure that there is nothing like this that will happen again? The Anbu are busy working on it. They will leave no stone unturned, but I doubt there is any enemy within the village. Our defenses are solid, it was only that moment that they managed to slip in. The Sandaime said in a firm. Chapter 27. Jiraiya ducked under a swing of a blade from a Kumagakure shinobi. The swing was aimed at cutting his head off his shoulders. He took a single step forward whilst slightly crouched, and then landed a powerful punch on the man's chest. The man let out a cry as the brutal punch connected, but before he could be sent flying, Jiraiya raised his left hand and grabbed the hand that was holding the sword. The Toad Sage then straightened up before grabbing the man with both his hands. He twisted around, lifting the man up into a swinging position. Once he had gained enough momentum, he threw the man straight into a group of enemies who were waiting for an opportunity to attack him whilst he was busy with their comrade. The Toad Sage didn't just wait for the man to hit his comrades, he formed an Adama Rasengan and lunged toward the enemy. As soon as the man crashed into his colleagues, who had attempted to catch him, Jiraiya appeared over them with the large Rasengan spiraling under his complete control on the palm of his right hand. There was nothing said as the Sannin slammed the jutsu into the group, causing an explosion of chakra as soon as it crashed on them. Jiraiya was forced to jump away to avoid the blast. The moment he landed on the ground, he was forced to be on the defensive after a man flashed above him, right foot weaving through the air in blinding speed. It was marching over to his forehead. Jiraiya quickly crossed both his hands above his hand, creating a firm defense. The kick crashed into his defense, causing him to slide backwards slightly. The Sannin cursed slightly under the strain. He may have held it back, but damn, it felt like one of Gei's kicks had hit him. Well, he should expect the enemy to have hard hitters as well. Another enemy burst forth from the ground, just in front of him holding a kunai. The Sannin was more than ready for the challenge this time. He lifted up his right foot before slamming its heel atop of the man's head. Boom! The man crashed back into the ground under the massive weight of the kick. Drea quickly twisted around as he sensed another opponent. A black-haired woman flashed a lightning-encased sword just across his chest. The Sannin had only managed to dodge it by a whisker, and even so, he still managed to lift up his left foot and slam a brutal kick on the woman's shoulder, sending her flying to the side. Drea jumped away to a safe distance and looked around. Everything was proceeding as planned. They were retreating, and only a couple were left in the battlefield. An order had come in earlier in the morning saying that they had to pull back close to the outskirts of Konoha. It was something that he hadn't questioned. If they stayed in here, they would be killed. Besides, the order also said that Kiri and Suna would be joining them in the location, so all was well. The Sannin was more than happy to pull everyone out of here. He was obviously winning that battle. His summons were keeping the enemy preoccupied whilst his people sped back deep into the forests of the Fire Country. He would join them soon enough, but he had given the order they do not wait for him, no matter what. They were supposed to go to the coordinates he had given them. He would not necessarily take the same direction if Kumo was pursuing him. The Toad Sage was forced to use a replacement jutsu when he found himself staring at a hail of kunes. He hadn't even had the time to use a wind jutsu to deflect the projectiles. The Sannin appeared atop of Gamabunta's head. Looks like everyone has retreated. The Sannin said, "We should disappear before things get nasty for us. You have been in this battlefield for too long. I doubt you can stay for any longer. You've kept me for longer." Gamabunta said, "If I wasn't, because your life would be gone. If I left, I would have left you long ago." "Don't be like that," Drea said with a smile. "You'll give the order for the others to leave the battlefield once we have made good distance," he said to the Toad Chief. Gamabunta didn't say anything. He just did a quick jump and blasted away from the battlefield. Drea was grinning, remembering the good old days he had found himself at Nachiko and had to rely on the Toad for his escape. Ah, what a good day that had been. He had to visit the land of women once again. Yes, after this war, he would go back again as a reward for this needless bloodbath. A man needed a reward after some heavy duty. Gamabunta did jumps for a couple of minutes before coming to a halt. "This is as far as I can take you," the Toad said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Drea landed on the ground and looked up. It was good that he had taken a different direction from his people, otherwise, it would not have been good. Well, for now, he just had to hurry back to Konoha and see what Minato has to say. Before the Sannin could move out, he felt multiple chakra signatures moving toward him. There was a lot of them. The Toad Sage pulled up his weight and began to run. The Sannin only sped through the forest for about 5 minutes before he came to a halt as the wreckage suddenly crashed in front of him. He cursed. The man wasn't alone. He was accompanied by many more shinobi from Kumagakure who had surrounded him. He was trapped. The only good thing was that they didn't appear as if they were going to attack him. "You're not going anywhere, Drea," the Yondaime Reikage said in a firm tone. Lightning burst around him as he activated his jutsu. "I have tremendous respect for you as a shinobi and your power, but this has to be done and will be done quickly." The moment the Reikage said those words, he disappeared in a blur, appearing in front of Drea. The man's lightning punch drove straight towards Drea's face. The Sannin could only make a haste defense that did him no good when the Reikage's fist tore through it and slammed into him, sending him flying backwards. Even though he had rocketed off the ground like a bullet, Drea didn't allow his body to crash into a tree brutally. Both his feet hit the tree with knees bent, and he balanced himself carefully. The Reikage flashed in front of him, a lightning-fast kick traveling towards his right shoulder. Drea dropped to the ground, avoiding the kick. It was purely instinct that allowed him to dodge the kick. The Reikage's kick tore through the tree's trunk, but the man still moved fast enough to come crashing down at him. Drea only brought both his hands above his head as the man's right heel came crashing above his head. Boom! There were lightning sparks as A's foot crashed into Drea's hands, causing the sage's feet to be burrowed into the ground whilst his knees bent slightly under the power of the kick. Jiraiya was cursing, because this was more than what he could handle as he was. Suddenly flashed away, landing in front of the toad sage. His body caused a small crater as he landed heavily and once again slammed his right foot on the side of Jiraiya's shoulder. The Sannin was sent flying to the side. Jiraiya flipped several times before landing on the ground. Out of instinct, then seeing the Raikage coming his way, he quickly lengthened his hair, creating a strong defense to protect his entire body. Lariat! Shouted as he landed his killer jutsu on Jiraiya, but the toad sage was protected by his hair, and thus was only sent flying backwards. For a moment, stopped moving and waited for the Sannin to come out. Sensing that the Raikage wasn't attacking, Jiraiya released his jutsu. He was panting tired. He had just been fighting a few moments ago, and the Raikage's attacks were brutal. The man's speed wasn't something one could scoff against. It was just ridiculous. Well, he could now understand why the man claims he could go as fast as Minato. Of course, that was nonsense. There was no one who could move as fast as Minato. Maybe Naruto could match those speeds in his limited field, but that was the thing with Naruto's teleportation jutsu, it was limited to a distance in which the formula covered. "You're not giving me any chance," Jiraiya said to the Raikage. A lesser man would have been dead already. Said, "Well, I wouldn't be a Sannin if I couldn't hold my own against you for even a minute." Jiraiya was quick to say, "True, but I cannot allow you to enter into your sage mode. Should you do that, it would change things. I'm willing to admit that I would not be sure if I can win. This is why I cannot give you a chance." Said, raising his right hand. "I'm only doing this because I know you're a powerful shinobi. If they were not careful, the Sannin would hurt them dearly." Jiraiya was capable taking out either him or the Tsukikage without any help from anyone. This was why he was being careful and fighting like this. His opponent was someone he could not afford to give a chance to fight, otherwise he would lose his advantage and then live to regret it. Jiraiya stared. The Raikage was giving a signal. Within a couple of seconds, the Sannin found himself a target of various lightning jutsus. The Sannin channeled chakra into his feet and did a quick jump propelled by chakra and managed to avoid the jutsu, but the Raikage was upon him within a half of a second. The man slammed a fist into Jiraiya's chest. There was a sickening crunch when the fist connected, and the Sannin let out a pained cry as he coughed up a mouthful of blood. The punch sent him flying backwards, but he didn't go further as Onoki suddenly appeared behind him, holding his hands together with a sick smile on his lips. Jiraiya sensed danger, and a clone popped beside him in a puff of smoke. "Jinten, Genkai Hakuri Hashira." Onoki blasted the jutsu in tremendous speed towards Jiraiya. The speed of the jutsu was incredibly fast, so quick that Jiraiya could only widen his eyes before he was seemingly engulfed by the jutsu before everything turned white for a moment as a confined explosion occurred. A couple of seconds later, Onoki smiled, looking down at Jiraiya. "Oh, you managed to get out of the way. Well, you're not just a Sannin for nothing." The Sannin was on his knees, heavily bleeding from his mouth after that brutal punch from the Raikage. He was sure that he had bones broken. He was not only bleeding from his mouth, but also from his left shoulder where his left arm used to be, but it was no longer there. It had been torn apart and had disappeared in the explosion caused by Onoki's jutsu. The toad sage was panting heavily. He knew he was done for, but on his right hand he was concealing the three-pronged kunai, his hope of survival. There was no other way to survive this ambush now. Only Minato could save him. Jiraiya stabbed the kunai into the ground with his remaining energy and fell down flat in his face. Onoki didn't get a chance to celebrate victory over the Sannin, and one that would give them a major boost in the efforts to win this war. Minato appeared in a flash of yellow within a second right on the side of the Sannin. He was on his knees and then stood up. He wasn't smiling. A clone appeared in a puff of smoke and took the Sannin beside him before disappearing in a flash of yellow. "Tsukikage, Raikage, it has been some time since we last spoke," Minato said in a hardened tone that had no emotion in it. His eyes reflected just that. Admittedly, it was an intimidating image. "Why don't we talk for a moment?" After forgiving your actions from the Hyuga incident to the Uzumaki incident, you have gone to do this. Both of you know what war is, and yet you have done this for your petty reasons. I'm most displeased with you, Sakikage. You have experienced so many wars. I would have thought you of all people would be willing to do everything to avoid it. You pushed and pushed, but I refused to push back. Now, we are at war. Sakikage, you attempted to slaughter innocent civilians. Have both of you become so morally crippled that you can no longer see what is right and wrong? The Yondaime wasn't shouting. His tone was calm, and that made it all the more chilling. There is no point in having this kind of discussion, Onoki said with a shrug. Unless you are thinking of surrendering, then we can talk. Surrender? Minato asked. Age has not given you wisdom, Sakikage, it has made you foolish, and your jokes are not amusing. The Yondaime shook his head in disappointment. You have pushed me for far too long and crossed a line that should not be crossed. Please do not resent me for pushing back. I'm saying this to you too because I will not touch you now, but most of these men surrounding me will be falling down in the next minute, and you will not have the power to do anything. I just want to remind you that this is war, and people you lead can die. Do you think you can just move around here without me stopping you? Said with a scoff. Minato took out two of his special kunes. You are not fast as me. On my base level, you were not able to do anything against my speed. What do you think you can do when I go ×2? Minato then jumped into the air in a blur. Hundreds of kunes flashed on all sides, embedding on the trees and some being deflected by the enemy. Minato suddenly disappeared. I could only watch what his eyes could not explain. He could only see yellow blurs around the trees. If anything, it looked like Minato was all over the place. There wasn't one, but many of them. The Yondaime hadn't been this fast the last time they met, and now he could not even decide where to go because the man was moving just too fast. It was less than a couple of seconds, but then yellow blurs finally stopped and Minato landed on the tree branch away from both and Onoki. Bodies started to fall from the trees like leaves. Before Minato could speak, a flashed in front of him and his lightning punch tore through the branch the Yondaime had been standing on. Minato had dodged the punch, and was now standing where the Raikage had been standing a second ago. This is the result of your actions. The next time we meet, I will not be alone, and if you still insist on continuing with this war, you will lose more of your people more than what you just lost now, and I will not kill you. You will live with the guilt and regret for the rest of your lives, and I truly hope you do learn from your mistakes. Minato stated. I'm not just being vengeful, I want you to learn that your decisions affect these men you lead into a pointless war. We have both your Jinchuriki, Onoki. I hope this gives you something to think about, and if you still insist on continuing with war, we will meet again and more people will die. Minato disappeared in a flash of yellow. Onoki had a murderous look on his face when Minato disappeared from view. That cursed brat. It was obvious now why his people hated the very existence of that man. Minato possessed something that one should not possess. That jutsu should be branded Kenjutsu, it should be banned from usage. How can just one man in a couple of seconds slaughter hundreds of shinobi without their cages being able to do anything about it? Onoki had never felt so powerless. He thought Naruto was worse, but Minato was certainly the worst. We need to move ahead and think of how we are going to do things from now on, Sakikage. The Yondaime Raikage said in a hardened tone. Onoki ignored the man in favor of focusing in his hatred for Minato. Victory had been within his grasp before the blonde appeared, but now they were back to square one with a few valuable pieces missing. Earlier with Tsunade, the slug princess had been rudely disturbed from her rest when Minato suddenly appeared in a flash of yellow. The Yondaime had dragged her back to the hidden leaf into a room where she found a couple of medics surrounding Drea, trying to stop his bleeding. There was panic in the room and haste in what they were doing. Tsunade hadn't even asked what had happened. She had kicked out the medics from the room and been left alone with her former teammate. He was in such a pitiful state, and surely, if those medics hadn't been quick enough, he might have died from loss of blood, not because of his wound. It took some time, but Tsunade managed to stabilize the man and stop his bleeding. Once she was done, she looked outside at the silent streets from the window. It was then she realized that this wasn't the view of the hospital. She shook her head before glancing back at her teammate. They were at war, and although she wasn't involved in the clash of blades and jutsus flying all over the battlefield, she was seeing the wounded coming to her. Even so, she hadn't felt motivated to take the stand herself to fight with everyone. This role of saving people had been one that was reserved for her. Besides, she wasn't a konoha kunoichi anyway. She was just helping them get through this little war, and then she would go back again to her beautiful life of gambling and drinking. She would go back immediately when the war ends. Tsunade blinked when Minato walked into the room. When had he left? That was a clone. Minato said to Tsunade. He was ambushed by Botha and Onoki. I managed to make it in time, the man said as he looked down at his former sensei. Is he going to be alright? Tsunade nodded. His life isn't threatened, but his left hand. It was a loss to Konoha, a massive loss. They surely could not afford to lose him when the war was just heating up. Who was going to take his place? Their enemies were surely celebrating now since the Toad Sage wasn't going to be able to fight anytime soon. How could he even fight with just one hand? Even if he was Drea, with one hand, it would be extremely difficult to navigate his way through the battlefield. Well, she was just happy she didn't get to lose another precious friend. Drea was going to live, and that was all that mattered. Of course, she wasn't going to say this to the man. No, he would get excited and keep on bothering her. She smiled at the thought. If he changed, he wouldn't be Drea, would he? They surely wanted him dead. Tsunade said of the strategy deployed by the Tsukikage and the Reikage. How are you going to cope with this? Why are you even withdrawing? She had been the only one left behind in camp. Shizune had already departed with the medic nins, and the wounded they had with them. She didn't get reasons as to why they were withdrawing. Was it because they were losing? Well, if something like this has happened to Drea, then they might have been losing. We are not withdrawing, just changing positions, Minato said. Are you being smart with me? Tsunade demanded. Minato smiled, not at all. He said, there has been a change of plans, and we are not losing. In fact, we are winning. This war will end soon. Once Suna and Kiri reach us, we will end this war, the Yondaime said in a firm tone. I'd just come to check up on him. If anything changes, let me know. Tsunade nodded. What happened? The hospital is going through some renovations. It had an unfortunate incident. Minato didn't sound very pleased with that. I will return soon, I need to talk to the Sandaime. Once again, the Yondaime Hokage disappeared in a flash of yellow. Minato's office. The Sandaime could see that Minato had a lot on his mind as he settled down behind his desk. The active Hokage had said he was being called, and then disappeared in a flash of yellow. Something must have happened, and he doubted it had to do with his son. The redhead had left yesterday. He couldn't be in trouble already, could he? You look troubled, Minato-kun, the Sandaime said in a calm tone. The many years of experience in the battlefield as a Kage had taught him so many things. Minato carried a lot of burdens as a Kage, and not just because of his job, but because of his ideals and beliefs. The job that he carried often had to go against his values, but that was something that was part of the job. When you became Hokage, you had to know what you were getting yourself into. Being a Kage wasn't just sitting behind the desk, issuing orders and signing paperwork. There was a lot of work, and so much burdens that one had to carry. Every life in the village was your responsibility, and the shinobi you sent out to battle were your responsibility as well. There was so much more to the job, and only someone who has tasted it before could understand. It was Drea. Minato started in quiet tone. He was ambushed, but I made it time. I was forced to play Naruto's role. For so long I have avoided playing my role, pushing everything to Naruto because he could do things I could in the battlefield. It isn't fair to him. But when I step into his shoes, I know what he has to go through. Minato shook his head. I know the feeling all too well. Maybe I just didn't want to experience it again. Nevertheless, I find myself with questions, Sandaime-sama. What questions? Will this world really ever see peace? Minato asked. My decisions have been with the thought of peace in mind, but at the same time, I must not make reckless decisions that will harm the people that I swore to protect. Truly, I do desire for there to be peace, but this war, the actions by Botha and Onoki in this war, make me question if we truly can find peace in this world. There was no doubt, after everything settles there would be division. It would take some time for there to be stability and then, they could just go on to hate them. Konoha hadn't done anything wrong and yet it was going to lose people. The families of those lost were going to blame those who were responsible, and with that came hatred, a hatred that he wondered would ever end. Minato really wished for a safe world. He didn't want to see another war and he really hoped that the next generation didn't have to experience it as well. This world was theirs and they could shape it, but its history just continues to control them. Humans keep repeating the same thing over and over again without an end to it. Petty emotions are what brought them to this point. I wonder about that myself, Minato-kun. The Sandaime said in a very aged tone. For years I thought things would change, but here we are again. If nothing is done, the next generation will not forget about this, but I just hope that the fear of war will bring them to think things over before making such careless decisions. I would not say I'm happy with it being like that, but it appears appreciation for the lives of other people, and knowing what is right and wrong isn't working for Shinobi. We have so far embraced the idea that we are the ones that are right and everyone else is wrong. The old man shook his head. Talk about self-righteous. We are like that. But how do we stop it? Does it start with how we end this war and what we do after it? The Sandaime didn't offer an immediate response. How you end and start will surely shape the future, but Minato-kun, you must be willing to make the hard decisions. There is a line. You are kind and want peace, but for the sake of what you have to protect, you mustn't allow that line to be crossed or they will push you. If you had reacted differently to the provocations of those two, they might, or might not have been fighting. Things can happen any other way. Nevertheless, you have to be firm, even if it means you must be forceful at times. No one is willing to listen to a weak person. Only those with power determine order. The Sandaime said in a firm tone. Perhaps it is time we did that, but at the same time, we must be careful not to push our ideals onto others and grow to become self-righteous. I was tolerant with both the Tsukikage and Reikage and maybe to a fault. Minato was willing to admit that. We are here, and once we have ended this, I will have to think of how we do things. I will not abandon my dream of peace, but at the same time, I cannot allow myself to be pushed around because of that dream. Unknown location. You really take it far. Kakuzu said in a stern tone to Haiden. I told you, no ritual. She has to be taken alive. He had to hit the crazy immortal bastard in order to stop him from killing their target. He didn't understand why the man felt he had to sacrifice his opponents to his god. Well, he wasn't the one to judge and he was used to it by now, but when the leader said the target had to be alive, you had to follow that rule, or else there would be trouble. You didn't have to hit me. Haiden said. This bitch really did know how to pack a punch though. Haiden said, cursing Ujido as he looked at his torn cloak. If you had killed her, the Bajoa sealed and her would have died as well. Do you know how long it would take for it to reform again? Kakuzu questioned. This wasn't the only Jinchuriki they would have to capture. There were others that they would have to get as well, and he had to drive the message straight into Haiden's thick skull. Yeah, I heard you. Haiden said. But we are sacrificing anyone else who comes to attack us. You're not getting their hearts. You got this round, and the next ones are mine. Kakuzu sighed as he picked up Ujido and flung her over his shoulders. He found himself saying fine, if it will please your god. Tem, are you mocking Jashin-sama? Haiden demanded, glaring at the man beside him. He was ready to attack the man. Shut up, Haiden. Kakuzu warned. You will infuriate me, and I will forget that you're my partner for a moment. Haiden snorted. As if you can kill me. Kakuzu suddenly stopped and looked ahead of him. There was someone strong waiting for them, and he could sense multiple chakra signatures some distance away, but it was apparent that they were coming towards them and from the direction they were taking. Come out. Kakuzu called out. Naruto landed a distance away. Well, this is surprising. But it should be expected from an experienced shinobi as you, Kakuzu. The redhead's eyes turned towards Haiden. A rotten piece of human. He didn't say anything though, but just looked over Kakuzu's shoulder. At least Uchiha was still alive. Yes, they had to capture the Jinchurikis alive because if they died, the Bajois would also temporarily die. Something like that would be mission failure, and the Akatsuki would have to wait for the Bajor to reform to continue with their plans. Naruto was at least thankful that things had to be done in this order. If Uchiha was dead, he wouldn't even be here. He would have left this place without engaging them. These two were immortals. He was just a man. Fighting them alone was just a risky move he was not willing to take. But here he was going to engage them, only for a little while. But there was no hope of making this a full-blown-out battle. He just had to distract them long enough to get his hands on Uchiha, and then he would disappear. Uzumaki Naruto. Kakuzu said calmly. Iwagakure has placed a rather large bounty on your head. I didn't think I will be collecting it on this day, but I will have to thank you for coming all this way. Naruto held out his hands defensively. Please erase such thoughts. The Uzumaki said. I plan on living. The bounty on my forehead cannot be cashed. I will have to admit, the money is rather attracting. If it was an enemy, he would have surely went after that person for the money. It was needed for his project in Uzu. You're not getting him, Kakuzu. Haiden shouted as he readied his tri-bladed scythe. We agreed that the next opponent would be mine to sacrifice, not to be used for your blasphemous deeds. I don't remember agreeing to it. Kakuzu said. Besides, I cannot allow such a bounty to be used for your useless game. He has more value. The man said, putting Uchiha down. He was willing to fight Haiden in order to get the Uzumaki. He wasn't going to allow the man to be a sacrifice, not when there was a large bounty on his head. He is mine. Haiden shouted as he rushed towards Naruto. The redhead knelt down and placed a hand on the ground as Haiden neared him. The man swung his scythe towards the Uzumaki, but Naruto suddenly flashed out of sight and appeared behind the man. A single swing of the sword separated the man's head from his shoulders. Kakuzu was upon Naruto in a second. The man swung a right foot towards the redhead's shoulder, but the Uzumaki disappeared in a flash. The fuck? You bastard, I will make you pay for this. Haiden shouted as his head rolled on the ground. Hey, Kakuzu, put me together. Kakuzu looked at Haiden for a moment, before shaking his head slightly. Not now. I told you, I cannot allow you to sacrifice him. I will handle him and afterwards I will put you back together. You bastard. I swear the moment you put me back together, I will sacrifice you to Jashin-sama. Kakuzu ignored the man, and turned towards Naruto, who was standing a distance away. That wasn't just speed. Is that your teleportation jutsu? The man asked as he looked around. When Naruto didn't respond, he spoke again. I guess being in this area won't be good for me. Naruto raised a single finger and pointed at Uchiha. He teleported right beside her, but the moment he appeared, a black figure with a mask appeared above him. The mask released a breath of flames directly down at him. Naruto crouched down towards Uchiha knowing that he might not get another chance to get to her. The flames hit him on the back for a moment, before he grabbed the Jinchuriki and flashed away. Kakuzu was upon him within a second, his right punch coming towards his face. Naruto ducked under the punch, and took a step forward before attempting to knee the man, but he regretted the move as his knee crashed into something so hard that it hurt. He felt it as if he had hit a stone-cold wall. Kakuzu reacted quickly by flashing his left foot towards the redhead, but Naruto managed to dodge the kick and appear a distance away. When he landed down, he noticed something on Yujido's chest, a glowing explosive tag. Boom! The tag exploded within a second, covering the redhead with red flames that burnt for a couple of seconds before clearing down. When they cleared, a not-so-smiling Naruto was standing still, his clothes burnt, sporting a couple of bruises, but Yujido was fine. "Did you think I would just leave her be like that?" Kakuzu asked calmly. "I'm disappointed though. From what I know, you would have left her with the tag in order to save yourself." Naruto was surprised. That was something he would normally do. He didn't go around sacrificing himself for other people. It would have been stupid and unnecessary for him to sacrifice himself for Yujido. But to think that the Akatsuki knew so much about his character. This was something he didn't expect, but it didn't do any harm. The fact that Kakuzu was willing to use such a strategy in such a short time meant that he was someone that should not be underestimated. Well, he wasn't underestimating the man, and he had to get out of here. Those people would be surrounding this place within a few seconds. "Since we are pouring out our hearts, I guess I should be honest." Naruto started calmly. "I actually did consider throwing her away to avoid getting caught in the blast, but I thought, this wasn't something that could kill me, and what if this was your strategy? If I had believed that the explosion would do more damage, I wouldn't have held her. Besides that, I think I like this woman." Kakuzu had no interest in that. Things were different now, and he had to come up with a way to get Yujido. The redhead would not fight with the woman in his hands. He had to do something about her before engaging him in a serious battle. However, if he didn't, it would make things easy for him, and he would collect the bounty he was seeing above the redhead's head. "How do you plan on fighting like that? You have made a crucial mistake," Naruto said to Kakuzu. "It was never my intention to fight you. Unfortunately, you're the type of people I cannot risk fighting against if there is no one watching my back. Besides, fighting you isn't necessary. I just wanted to get this woman and then head back to the hidden leaf." "Do you think you can escape?" Naruto appeared to think about it for a couple of moments before responding. "Admittedly, I think it would be difficult, but not impossible. Your battle with Yujido attracted Kumo's attention, and I'm sure you have sensed them already. They will keep you busy while I run away. What makes you think they will not go after you as well?" He wasn't afraid to face the Kumo masses. He could use something to calm himself. If Naruto does manage to escape, he would have not only lost his target, but more importantly a load of money. "They will be too afraid to chase after me," Naruto said as a clone appeared in a puff of smoke. He gave the clone Yujido before he summoned the QB. The giant nine-tailed fox appeared in a large cloud of smoke and stared down at the field. Naruto quickly leapt onto the Bajoa's head with his clone. "It really feels refreshing breathing this fresh air every time you summon me," Kurama said to Naruto. "Who do you want me to get rid of?" "No one," Naruto said in a calm tone. "Let us just get out of here." "You summoned me so that you can run with your tails between your legs?" Kurama was infuriated by the thought. He was the QB, he didn't run away from the battlefield, especially not against mere humans. This was just insulting to his pride. "I won't be the one whose tails will be wagging," Naruto said a bit dismissively. "But we are simply clearing the field for two enemies to kill each other. Kumo shinobi are coming here and they will engage the Akatsuki. I don't care who wins. Now let us go," the redhead said in a firm tone. Kakuzu wasn't stupid. He wasn't going to do something stupid as trying to attack that Bajoa. Naruto alone would be a problem, but the QB wasn't a beast that he wanted to fight. The Bajoa wasn't something that a normal human could fight alone. He simply turned towards Haiden with the thought of putting him back together so that they could vent out their anger together on the incoming shinobi. He wasn't happy and the leader wasn't going to be happy about this loss. They shouldn't have lost the two tails, but they did, and that man would not be pleased with him. Well, it wasn't like he was going to something to him, and he could still get the two tails. He knew Naruto was going back to Konoha, so after this, he would head towards the leaf, but a report would need to be given to the leader. With Itachi, the order to withdraw towards Konoha had also reached the Uchiha, and he was sure that his father would be going back now, or maybe the man would wait for him. He was currently conducting a mission of slowing down the enemy lines to give enough time for Konoha forces to withdraw without having to worry about the enemy catching up to them. Of course, the withdrawing would have to be done in haste because once the enemy realizes they will try to pursue them in large numbers. Well, it would be foolish to think they have not realized it by now. Itachi, one of the Uchiha under his command, said to him. Itachi looked at the man. He was sitting on a tree branch. Is everything done? The man nodded. Yes. He said. We have laid the traps all over this forest. You can see them with the Sharingan, but since the enemy don't have anyone who sees through chakra, they will be caught in the traps. Itachi nodded and stood up on the branch. Return to my father's side. He should also be withdrawing now. I will lead the enemy into the traps and will join you back at the rendezvous point. The Uchiha issued out a firm order that wasn't to be argued. The enemy wasn't just going to walk into the traps. There were no such miracles. Someone would have to act as bait to lead them here, otherwise if they were just going to guess where the enemy would pass through, they would have to set traps all over the entire forest, but that had the potential of catching friendlies as well. This was the most effective method because he could outrun them. He knew where the enemy was. He just had to get their attention, fight a bit, and then run as if he had realized that he could not win. They would follow him to this death trap. Then he would have to turn back to Konoha, but he would have to ensure that no one was else behind first before going back. With Mei was leading a strong army of 5,000 shinobi and kunoichi. She had just entered the fire country and was marching in the direction of the hidden leaf. She had taken this much because she was certain that no one would attack Kiri at this time, and there was also a high possibility that they might not even fight. After what Minato did for her, this was the least she could do. Konoha was facing destruction at the hands of Iwa and Kumo. It had no ally backing it up in this useless war. They were supposed to have been welcomed by Naruto the moment they got out of their ships, but the redhead didn't come. Instead, she only got a message saying that he was currently occupied with something that had come up, and she had to lead her army to a given location. Halt! Ao suddenly commanded, stopping the shinobi behind him. What is it? Mei asked the Byakugan user. Naruto jumped out of the trees with his hands raised in surrender. Are you really Naruto? I got a report that you were held up with something. After checking with his Byakugan, Ao spoke. It is him. He said to his cage. Naruto didn't say anything until he reached Mei and her company. I was by the land of hot water taking care of some business. I had to return to Konoha because there would be people after me, dangerous people. The redhead said. But I was surprised to learn that the delightful woman I was going after was positioned to stop you. Mei looked at the redhead questionably. A Jinchuriki of the two tails. The Raikage must have known that you'd have trouble dealing with her. I assumed the objective wasn't to stop you completely, but to reduce your numbers and slow you down. Since the Raikage's brother is somewhere around the land of hot water, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a plan for him to join in as backup. It was a good strategy from the Raikage, but a pity he didn't account for the Akatsuki to make a move on his Jinchuriki. Really, if it wasn't because of the Akatsuki, Yujido would have attacked these people, caused death, and it would not have been good. Naruto would have to thank the Akatsuki. Because of the organization, they had managed to kill two birds in one stone. You said there would be dangerous people chasing you. Mei said. Naruto nodded. Have no fears. It is the Akatsuki and Kumo's forces. They are probably done killing each other now. The redhead said calmly. But that doesn't mean you should relax. To make things easier for movement, you can divide your people in two groups. The passage is safe. Konoha's forces are currently withdrawing into the outskirts of the village, so you will meet them soon. You will also be joined by Suna's forces. Aren't you going to join us? Mei asked. Naruto shook his head. I'm just a clone. Nevertheless, we should see each other tomorrow. If anything comes up, please don't hesitate to call my father. He will be in your presence to assist you. Mei found that to be amusing. She had come here to assist the Yondaime Hokage, not to be assisted by him. I think we can handle whatever comes our way. The Godai Mizukage said. Naruto smiled. Well then, I wish you a pleasant journey, he said, but before he could disappear, Mei stopped him. Can I talk to you for a moment? The clone nodded and walked with the Mizukage for a bit. What is going on in the war? How are things? I need something to tell my men. They are a bit worried knowing that we are facing 2 great villages with a total of 4 Jinchurikis combined. Anyone would be worried. She was slightly worried, but that didn't mean she was going to continue with the march in fear. No, fear wouldn't win them any battle they would face if they do end up fighting. She had to remain strong, because without the will to fight, there was nothing left of a shinobi. We have captured 2 Jinchurikis of Iwa and the real me is on his way to Konoha to deliver another one from Kumo. We have suffered some losses, but things look good for us. Once you reach the rendezvous point, you will see the kind of force we make. He then smiled. The 3 Jinchuriki can be used against both Kumo and Iwa if they insist on fighting, and not to mention the Kyubi. So you have nothing to worry about. Mei nodded. Looks like you have things under control, she said. She stared the redhead for a long minute. I know you're just a clone, but you seem a little lighter. Really? It must because the original did something he has never done before. The clone said, but didn't go any further than that. I will see you tomorrow, Mizukage. Fire Country? O was the one who was cursing now instead of Onoki. That Sakikage had cursed and vented his anger on the forest after Minato left them saying that he had captured both Iwa's Jinchuriki. Later, they had received that the damage done to the leaf was nothing, it was just minor. It wasn't part of the plan, but it had happened. They now had to find a way to do things. Well, this taught them that they could not rely on Jinchuriki in battle. They were never going to do that again. The positive here was that they were moving towards Konoha and by tomorrow, they would be within the village's outskirts. There would be no hiding then. Still, why was Konoha withdrawing? Was it because they were being overwhelmed? That wasn't the biggest problem now. The problem was that Naruto had taken Yujido from the Akatsuki and then those 2 men who could no longer deny went on to slaughter many of his men before they managed to retreat. That cursed organization, he didn't think they could make a move now, and he hadn't even known that they were after Jinchuriki. Stared at his partner in crime, the Sakikage. What exactly do you know about the Akatsuki? The old man had been using the organization for his many deeds he didn't want to do himself. He had to know something about them. He would hunt them down after this war for messing with his plans. He didn't care who led them and how many they were, but he would not forgive this disturbance that was going to cost him dearly. Not much. Onoki said, he wasn't pleased about it either. But I know that they are a group of S-ranked criminals. In one of my dealings with Kabuto, I had him give me some intel about them, but it wasn't anything useful. We can discuss them after the war. At least they had something to do after the war. If not, there could have been plans of betrayal in one of them, but if their cooperation was needed to take down the Akatsuki, then their little partnership could still go on for a while. He had information about the group, and would not get it if something happens to him. You better have someone useful, Sakikage. The Reikage said in a hardened tone. If they went after Yujido, they could also go after B. I cannot allow that to happen. I had thought they were just criminals, but this report tells me that they are a group not to be underestimated. Onoki didn't find any surprise in that. The group has always been effective in the work they did. Regardless of how big the task was, they seemed capable of doing anything. Well, he had used their services because they were strong and got the job done to satisfaction. You're not overly concerned that they took your Jinchuriki. If anything, it seems that you're much more worried about the Akatsuki, or at least getting rid of them. Onoki said with a careful eye. Considering that the Jinchuriki was supposed to be close to the man, he found this to be a little surprising. Perhaps he treated her as nothing more than a weapon, or just any other of his shinobi. Onoki was certain that if it were B who had been captured, the man would have marched to Konoha on his own just so he could get his brother back. "You don't understand what they have done," A said in a hardened tone. "I told you I would handle Kiri, but I never said how." Uchido was supposed to halt their movements. After B was done with the Uchiha, he would move out to support her in dealing with them before joining us in the final battle. I don't believe that Naruto would have gone after Uchido if the Akatsuki hadn't made a move. This means that she would have gone to do her mission. Because this has happened, Kiri will join us in battle, and there are reports saying that Suna might join as well. I don't know, but do you understand how this has messed up our strategy? Onoki frowned. Yes, this wasn't looking good at all. Maybe it was time to curse again, because this wasn't something he wanted to see. Konoha has the ability to manipulate our Jinchuriki to fight against us. The Raikage said, "We need to rethink things now because any reckless movement towards Konoha would result in the loss of this war. I do not want to go back to Kumo wearing the mask of humiliation." Konoha is a village led by Minato. Onoki cut in firmly. "Do you really think that the noble Yondaime Hokage would go to such lengths? Manipulation of our own Jinchuriki to fight us? This is the same person who did nothing when you tried to capture a Hyuga. It's different this time." The Raikage said, "This is war." I saw the look on his face earlier. The man shook his head to clear his thoughts. "What, are you suggesting we retreat and find a way to get our Jinchuriki?" "Don't be ridiculous," the Yondaime Raikage said. "But we will have to think of a way to get them." Rain. Obito appeared in the tower of the god of Amigakure in his usual style. The moment he found both Tendao and Konan, he went straight to business. "Konoha has captured the two tails. Haiden and Kakuzu had captured her, but the hidden leaf interfered. She is probably on her way to Konoha now." Tendao turned to Obito with an expressionless look. "That is unexpected. What of the one tail?" "I have the Jinchuriki, but we have lost both Deidara and Sasurai," Obito responded. He hadn't thought that Konoha would be a problem like this, but the village has made things easier for them because it now had 4 Bujois. They could just go on to the village and destroy it, before taking the collected Jinchurikis. They could go after the rest later on. "The hidden leaf is interfering in our plan for peace." Pain stated that was the obvious. "We must solve it quickly. We cannot move ahead with them in the way." Obito nodded. "I agree with you. Then how are you going to go about it?" "I will go to the hidden leaf. Most of their shinobi are out of the village. What remains is just children. It should be easy to collect the Bujoa," the man said. "It should be done soon because once the war ends, they will regroup and make it difficult," Obito said. "With your current mobility, it would take time for you to get to the hidden leaf without being seen by them. Shinobi are all over the fire country. I can take you there. It would make it simple for the man to get to Konoha without experiencing too much obstacles. He would have another dance with his sensei. The last one had ended abruptly. This time he would have to settle the score, and then he would be a step closer to his dream. I must prepare my paths." "Tomorrow morning," Pain said. "I will return then," Obito said before disappearing in a black swirl. Konan looked at Nagato with concern. They both knew that Obito could not be trusted, but it was apparent that Konoha had to be removed because it was being a problem to their dream. If they did nothing, the hidden leaf could stop them from capturing other Jinchuriki, and that would not make things easy for them because things could not work without the Bujoa. Still, she was worried about Nagato. Was it going to be safe sailing in Konoha? He has never faced defeat and hasn't come close to defeat, so she wasn't worried about that. But she was worried about what would happen with that man who called himself Madara. "I'm going with you, Nagato," Konan said in a firm tone. Pain shook his head. "No, you will stay here. I alone am enough for this mission. Besides, I believe Madara will join me." He has said he would be dealing with the Yondaime, so that makes things easy for me. You need to stay here and watch over Ame in case someone tries something. We need to keep this village protected. I know, but I have been by your side, Nagato. Conan said. I know Conan, but this time stay and watch over Amigakure. Pain said. We know that ill is lurking. We cannot give them an opening, or they will involve our village in their petty. He paused. If we succeed tomorrow, peace will be within our grasp. Later that day, Minato looked up as Naruto appeared in his office. The son of his was wearing just a long-sleeved t-shirt, black pants. He looked refreshed. You've already gone home? Minato asked. Naruto shook his head. I dropped by my place to leave Uchiha there and then washed up a bit. Minato raised an eyebrow. He would have thought Naruto would take the woman down to the underground facilities where they were holding Iwa's Jinchuriki. It was the most secure place for them to host enemies of such power. It also ensured that if a miracle of them escaping their chains, they could not do anything harm to the leaf. But in her current place, Uchiha could do a lot of damage to the village if she awoke and turned on them. She was still an enemy who was going to fight them, so why was Naruto keeping her in his apartment, not locked up in her cell? The son of his didn't do pity. He would rather kill a person than pity them. Why make such a move, Naruto? Minato asked in a Hokage tone. I trust you, but we are not sure what she will do, and I cannot permit anything that puts the village's security in danger. It would be disastrous if she suddenly transformed and wreaked havoc in the village. Considering that this would be Naruto's fault, Minato would have to quit being Hokage after the war. People would turn on Naruto, they would not forgive him for something like that. Minato doubted Naruto would care, though he would just take his clan back to Uzu. He was already building it, and it was their former home. He could take them back there if Konoha no longer welcomed them. It would certainly be a major decision to make, but since Naruto would only do it thinking of his clan, the people would follow him. Don't worry, Naruto said. She is sleeping and won't wake up unless I remove the seal on her. I just thought she is someone I don't want to put in a cell. If she does anything, I will claim responsibility for it. Tomorrow, she will be by the clan compound. Minato shook his head. Why are you going that far for her? I like her. Naruto simply said. She is a delightful person and still owes me a date. Does she have the same thoughts as you? Naruto appeared to think for a couple of seconds before shrugging. If she doesn't break my legs, then yes. He said. Minato sighed. That was something that Naruto had done to her in the Chunin exams. The brutality had started there. Well, at least then he didn't go as far as to kill everyone he faced. Back then, if you fought him and lived, you wouldn't want to face him again. How is she? She is healing. This is why I made sure she doesn't wake up. Those two are brutal. Naruto said. Like someone I'm talking to? Minato asked with a smile. Maybe, but at least I can die. He said. Those two just can't die. I didn't fight them, by the way. So they are probably still alive, but if I have Itachi by my side, I won't have a problem facing them. After the war? Minato said. Naruto nodded. I'll be home tomorrow morning. The redhead said as he stood up. For now, I need to get a good night's sleep and rest my body and mind. Any particular reason you're not going home? I know you have always used your apartment, but considering what you have there, wouldn't it be much safer for you to be home? If something happens, it can be contained to just the compound. Minato reasoned. True, but I'm going to go with what I have decided. Are you avoiding Azumi? Naruto shook his head. She'd kill me if she found out I was avoiding her. That was all he said before disappearing in a burst of flames. The following day, Uchiha nearly screamed and jumped out of the bed she was sleeping in when she woke up and found herself staring at crimson hair. She didn't shout, because the only person she knew who had this kind of summon was Naruto, but of course that raised questions in her mind. Naruto. Wait, What was she even doing in bed with him? Was she dreaming? Yes, she had to be. The last thing she remembered was falling unconscious with the bloody Akatsuki standing over her. She had been captured. Was she dead, and this was a world where she lived her fantasy? You're awake, Naruto said as he turned around to face the blonde. He then got up and put on his t-shirt. Welcome to heaven. Uchiha stared, he was smiling a beautiful smile. Yes, this was heaven. Naruto laughed for a couple of seconds before he caught himself. Was he just laughing? What was wrong with him? He shook his head. This is the hidden leaf. I saved you yesterday from the Akatsuki and brought you back here. Uchiha asked her Bajoa what was going on, and the Bajoa informed her that she had been rescued. The blonde quickly looked down to see what she was wearing. She still had on torn clothes. She sighed in relief before looking back at Naruto. Why am I sleeping in the same bed as you? I wasn't going to sleep on a couch when I have a comfortable bed, Naruto said. Besides, you were practically dead, the redhead said with a shrug. How are you feeling though? Good, considering what I went through, Uchiha said. She paused. Isn't it weird that I am calm despite that I am in enemy village? Not at all, Naruto said, with a shake of his head. I'm going home to get you some clothes. Stay behind and take a shower, and don't try to leave the apartment, because no one aside from the Hokage knows you are here. Uchiha stared at the redhead Uzumaki. You're going to leave me here? I am a Jinchuriki and an enemy of Konoha. I was going to attack your allies, and you still treat me like this. Why? Well, we can't go on our date if you look like that, Naruto said calmly. Uchiha stared, baffled. Was he okay? With Itachi? Uchiha Itachi. Kaizen greeted the Uchiha with a wide smile, his sword held firmly on his right shoulder. Care to join me in a bloody battle? He had been dropped here by Obito, who had confirmed the Uka's location through Setsu. He was supposed to keep the Uchiha occupied whilst they worked on Konoha. Obviously, they didn't want anyone who could be a threat to get in the way of taking care of the business on the other end. Kaizen really wanted to let loose on the other side, but the Uchiha would do. This was someone who was powerful after all. This person before him had the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, so this was going to be fun if not brutal, but he was going to enjoy himself. Hoshigate Kaizen, Itachi said, looking at the man carefully. Naruto had fought the man and removed one of his hands, but he had both. He must have had it reattached after the battle. Still, this was a dangerous person he didn't want to face, not when he had a chilling feeling making his hair stand. It was never a good feeling, which was why he wanted to get back to Konoha quickly. He was already close to the village anyway. I thought the Akatsuki only went after Jinchuriki, Itachi stated, finding it curious that the man would come to him. There was no doubt that he was looking for a fight, and a fight Itachi would give the man. Well, there have been some issues that have come up, Kaizen said. I'm not supposed to say, but the end is coming soon and I would like to have a blast before it comes. Konoha is going to be destroyed and I am here to make sure you don't get to the village. Kaizen only said that because he wanted to fight a very motivated person. Because of this, the Uchiha would have all the reason to give it his all so that he could finish the battle quickly and hurry back to Konoha. Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan came to life. He had no reason to doubt that man. This just confirmed what he had been feeling all along. He could not allow the hidden leaf to be destroyed. It would mean failure on his part as someone who has vowed to protect his home. To do that, he had to negotiate his way through this man, and quick, because he didn't have seconds to waste. There were two ways he could end this within a couple of seconds. It was either Amaterasu or Tsukuyomi. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out the other playlist. Hope you would like them too.